Affairs, politics, public policy here on the home of Black Talk Media. Once again, it is WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. I am Charles Ellison. I am your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check here on WURD. You can catch me on twitter.com at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. For more social media conversation or to see what my thoughts are throughout the day, go to twitter.com at Ellison Report. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our companion magazine to this program right here, Reality Check, WURD, the B Note, THEBE note.com. That's THEBENOTE.com. That's the B Note. You can subscribe to what amounts to a somewhat daily newsletter, some daily musings from yours truly and from other contributors that you hear on this program, other conversations, data points, statistics, and intelligence that we cover on this program. We also extend the conversation at thebenote.com. Welcome to the program. In fact, today at the top of today's midweek edition, coming back with us, she's joining us pretty much every week, is Sojourner Havey. She's our Vote Beat reporter assigned to WURD. She's been covering this 2020 election cycle specifically as it's happening or as it has unfolded and happened in Philadelphia and the aftermath. There's still a lot of issues to discuss. There's the aftermath and people also sort of reacting and responding to who was just voted on, what was just voted on. Sojourner Havey is joining us by phone here on Reality Check. Sojourner, how are you doing?
Charles.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, excellent. Can you hear us well?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. You had actually done some recent reporting on, right, and looked into how the illiteracy crisis that's happening in Philadelphia, and we had this conversation before. Someone had raised it, one of our listeners had raised it, who raises it quite a bit, this illiteracy crisis in Philadelphia. You have over a quarter of adults in Philadelphia are functionally illiterate. You had did some reporting on how this affects or impacts the city's administration of elections. What did you find?
Certainly. So according to the National Center for Education Statistics, about 32% of Philadelphia adults lack basic literacy, and another 37% are only nearly proficient in reading. So in total, that's over 800,000 Philadelphian adults who struggle to read. And so when we think even about like the margin of victory between Biden and Trump this year, that's well within that margin. So it's really important that low literacy voters feel empowered, to vote and have all of the resources to vote. I had some conversations with City Commissioner Omar Sabir and Lisa Deely, and they told me that the city actually does a lot to accommodate low literacy voters. One of the ways is through voter assist, so you can request assistance within the voting booth. Anyone can kind of accompany you in there. They just can't be your employer or the judge of elections. And then another thing is the ballot numbers. So what's really great about the ballot numbers is that for every candidate, of course, there's a ballot number associated with them. So even if you don't know their name, if you get the number down, you can identify the number on your paper ballot or on the ballot in the poll, and you can vote that way. And with the new voting machines now, you can actually have the ballot read to you through this in an audio way within the booth in English or Spanish.
Okay. So they're saying that they're doing this pretty extensively. That they have some programs. Did they see like serious problems? Because those figures that you just gave, that data is really staggering.
Right.
So basically, 32%. It's over a quarter, 32% of Philadelphia adults functionally illiterate. But then you added on top of that, was it 35% who just struggle to read, and 37% who struggle to read. So they're literate on some level. They're probably not literate beyond like a 6th grade reading level. That kind of matches a little bit with the national data. I think the national data is like 54% of adults don't read. Total mass like are on some level struggling to read. I think about like 20% of that is reading below a 3rd grade level. That's staggering, right?
Right.
Did they have any issues? Were they seeing issues during the 2020 election cycle, particularly during pandemic?
They actually said they didn't think this was, well, what's interesting, I guess I'll say first, is that when I was talking to Commissioner Deely, she said they're able to track how many people request voter assist. Like, that's something the city feasibly has access to, but they don't know why. They don't actually track why people track it, so it could, or why people request assistance. So it could be someone speaks English as a second language and requested assistance. It could be someone broke their hand that day and couldn't use the machine, so they needed assistance. They can't really discern if the number of voter assists they're getting is specifically for low literacy concerns. And so, of course, that's something you want to be able to track so you can kind of understand the scope of the problem and see, like, what the need actually, you know, to quantify what the need is. But unfortunately, that's not something the city of Philadelphia does, and I don't think the larger state does as well. But I think something that's important to kind of, like, consider when we're thinking about, you know, some of the social factors that contribute to this, like Philadelphia's poverty rate is double the national average, and it's the highest among the 10 largest cities in the United States. And of course, we know research shows that the link between low literacy, poverty, poor health, you know, likelihood of incarceration, these are all issues that we contend with in the city. And of course, compounded, that's going to impact someone who already isn't, you know, reading at reading level.
Yeah, no, that's just that's really staggering. We're going to open up the phone lines too in case people have questions about this. Want to also add any conversation or perspective. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Have you had an opportunity, Sojourner, to talk to anyone? I suspect that, I guess this is something to follow up on beyond even this conversation, but have you had an opportunity to talk to other folks beyond the city commissioner's office? I mean, do you intend at some point or plan to maybe talk to city council, talk to the mayor? That's alarming.
I know.
That's much more staggering than what we initially thought was the case as far as Philadelphia and this illiteracy crisis.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this problem is there's such a spectrum of, like, what we call literacy or, you know, fluency. So when you start to look at the whole spectrum, the numbers get larger because, like you said, you could be, like, reading on a sixth grade level and have been able to, you know, get through all the basic life functions, you know, and fly by, but there's still other, you know, skills that you're missing or that you don't have access to. And yeah, of course, that is concerning. I've been in conversation with the director, because there's actually two major agencies in Philadelphia that actually address this problem. And so that's the Center for Literacy and the Community Learning Center. And so they work with adult learners throughout the year and provide incredible amount of resources for that community. So they're doing a lot of the on-the-ground work. And yeah, we're excited to bring this story, you know, to the WURD audience, and we actually talked to an adult learner about her voting journey. So you're going to have that story sometime this week.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and I think that, you know, it's definitely something we need to continue to follow up on because it's not being discussed enough in the city. Obviously it's not being it has not been risen to, like, the level of urgency that folks would expect, at least in terms of the response from City Hall. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. In case you have questions for Sojourner Ahabi, who is our Vote Beat reporter here on WURD, has been looking at a lot of the issues that have grown out of election 2020. She did a very superb job covering the 2020 elections in Philadelphia. Philadelphia obviously being the corner of this great battleground state of Pennsylvania that clinched it for Joe Biden in the presidential race. But there are a lot of other issues that we need to unpack that have come out of this 2020 election that we need to understand better. So Sojourner Ahabi will be joining us each week here on Reality Check. You know, the other thing too, kind of switching gears here, Sojourner, voters had approved the establishment of a new police oversight commission. So I want to see where that's going. Also, they amended the city's charter, to ban stop and frisk, or to ban like illegal stop and frisk. So let's talk about that Police Oversight Commission first, and what's the status of that? What's the update on it? Where are we going from here?
Yeah, so it's really exciting to hear that over 2/3 of over 500,000 Philadelphians voted yes to replacing the chronically underfunded Police Advisory Commission with a new citizen-led Police Oversight Commission. So just those numbers alone are really exciting, and it shows that there's a real support across the city for something like this. A lot of thanks goes to City Council member Curtis Jones, who actually introduced the Police Oversight Bill to City Council. But yeah, at this point, what I'm understanding after having conversation with the executive director of the current Police Oversight Board, City Council is really going to kind of run the show. PAC has given them some general program architecture for what police oversight could look like in Philadelphia, but it's ultimately City Council that will decide, you know, the powers that they will have, the expanded powers, the expanded budget, all of those key reforms that we're looking for a real, you know, oversight commission to have adequate powers to, you know, get things done.
Is there a discussion about subpoena powers?
Absolutely, yeah. Investigative powers include ability to issue subpoenas, conduct independent investigations into complaints made by, you know, any member of the PPD, the ability to open investigations that were closed by Internal Affairs, and one of the major things is for them to have direct access through login credentials to internal police files like body-worn camera footage, personnel records, discipline records. It's very expansive, and these are all things that PAC has lacked throughout its existence here in the city. So this is, yeah, very exciting.
Okay, got it. What sort of dollar figure are we hearing about? You know, just sort of, is there any sort of ballpark figure that's floating about in terms of the cost of this new advisory commission?
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot. Okay, there's a few things you should know first before I answer that question. As it stands right now, the current PAC, Police Advisory Commission, they exist under an executive order through the mayor's office. Okay. So it's not through the city charter, which means it's not permanent. It can be done away with through any administration. If the mayor just doesn't like police oversight during some, you know, election administration, they can just say, all right, we're going to be done with this. So of course that's not something that you want a police oversight commission to have to contend with. So with the new reform, it's actually going to be written into the city charter, and it's going to be a standalone agency. And part of that comes with the kind of budget it's going to now be allowed. So one of the suggestions that the executive director and the team over at PAC have made is that the budget should be directly tied to the police department's budget, at least 1% to 3% of that budget. So, and that's also sort of another protection to protect it from, you know, bipartisan politics and changing administrations, because you're always going to have a police department and you're always going to have a police budget, you know, in the way that our city infrastructure works right now, at least. So if it's tied to that budget, then, you know, it's kind of like they'll always have that money coming in. It's dependable.
Got it. Is this, do we see any sort of similar commissions or similarly structured commissions in other cities where the commission looks like this, where it's based off the cities or the municipal police department, where it's a standalone agency? So I appreciate that too. So that's the differentiator there, because I've been asking that question out loud. Okay, we already have a police advisory commission. We've had one since the 90s for quite some time. It's been underutilized. I think that people need to know that. People need to understand that this is going to be separate from the mayor's office. It will no longer be a mayoral function. It will have its own standalone infrastructure, its own standalone budget. Hopefully that makes it much more effective. But do we see anything similar in other cities?
We do. When we look at cities like New York and Chicago, for instance, which have some of the most substantial police oversight boards of any city really in this country, they're structured very similarly. In New York, the budget comes directly from the police department budget. And that's why when we saw, coronavirus happen and, other city agencies got slashed, including our own Police Advisory Commission, by the way, their budget got slashed as a result of pandemic-related losses this year. You didn't see quite the same thing happen in New York, where that budget was tied to the police department budget.
Interesting. How are the I'm real curious. How's the Fraternal Order of Police in Philly responding to this or reacting? How are police lobbying interests, police union interests responding? And I wonder too about the police department rank and file, the police department brass. How are they responding to this new advisory commission and the fact that it's going to be its own independent agency?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting dynamic and something I didn't really appreciate, sort of the distinction between the FOP, which, they kind of represent police officers and police officer rights, and then the actual Philadelphia Police Department. So the police department has been working sort of in tandem with PAC and the rest of the city, and have actually been, a big part of trying to get some of this oversight stuff happening. Even, former Commissioner like Ramsey was in conversation through this conference earlier this summer at the Penn Law Conference. And he was talking about why oversight actually really helps, and that it's important to have, an outside force looking in addition to internal affairs, because it just allows them to be more thorough, and to make sure that the people that are working for them are doing their job, and doing it safely and, of course, respecting the community. Whereas with the FOP, there's been a lot of pushback because, the more that we try to get oversight on the table, and to get substantial oversight, there's just been a lot of pushback from the FOP because they don't want that. So, there's definitely a distinction between those two groups. And I think sometimes they get, kind of consolidated into one, but it's not always that way.
Mm-hmm. And who should we look at in particular? Can you sort of tell, Sojourner, as we get into that in the weeds discussion in City Council about what the new Police Advisory Commission power should be? Who are the players that we should look at in City Council? Who do you think will have more influence over this conversation?
Oh, absolutely. Councilmember Curtis Jones, because as I said earlier, this is his bill. Councilmember at large Kendra Brooks has actually done a lot of work around this even prior to the bill being introduced, and she's very passionate about this project. We spoke to her earlier last week. So I'd say those people, but really all the council members in general, it passed. Everyone passed it, and they're really, really excited to get this on the ball and rolling. And, I would say just pay attention to City Council. And, of course, PAC, Anthony Arachi, who's the acting executive director, look out for things from that organization as well.
Oh, from the current PAC? From the current
PAC. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Got it. We need to. So is that executive director of the current PAC? Will he transition over to this new PAC?
Exactly. That's my understanding. So what's really important to note is that right now, oversight is still happening. It's not like everything has stopped and they're just waiting to transition into this new moment. Everything is still rolling over at the current PAC. Oversight is still happening. Staff is still working. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be a slow and gradual transition into the new citizen-led police oversight infrastructure. And what I believe is there's going to be an additional hiring of folks, because right now they're only staffed by 7 people, I believe. So part of, rededicating the mission is expanding the staff to make sure that they have the capacity to do the job that they're supposed to do.
Yeah. And let's hope that the composition of the board is balanced. It's representing all interests and all stakeholders adequately. And we can do some follow-up on this next time we talk, Sojourner, but I'm just kind of throwing some conversation out there and, just before I let you go. But I'm real curious about the involvement of young people. And what I mean by young people, not age 25 plus, I mean 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Because I keep hearing about these task forces and commissions and boards that are being created, community resulting from community activism, and these are issues that directly impact young people. And people are young people this and young people that, but there's no young people presence like there's no young person or Gen Z presence on these boards or commissions. I don't know. I don't understand how people overlook that, but I'm wondering
Right.
if we can have that kind of representation on it. Like, you know, I want to make sure that people are actually putting that kind of rhetoric into practice. But maybe we'll follow up on that next weekend, and maybe also just talk about sort of the role of young people moving forward in this on this new political landscape in a place like Philly after this
Right.
election. I think that that's something we need to look at and cover.
Oh, absolutely. I think something that even the director had acknowledged is that so much of what we saw happening this summer around, you know, the protests and the unrest, which was largely, you know, ran by young people in the city and young activists, really got the ball rolling for this, you know, new Oversight Commission. You know, of course, it was already kind of years in the making, but it really sped up the process, and everybody has sort of acknowledged that, you know, that activist spirit that we saw this summer really got the ball rolling for some of this, you know, oversight.
Exactly. So, I mean, young people are going to have to play a prominent role on this in this new advisory commission. It can't just be one, and it can't just be one young person. I mean, there have to be a few young people on it. Yeah. So I'm just hoping that people are going to follow up on that and be really sincere about wanting that Gen Z perspective. We've been talking to Sojourner Ahebi. She is Vote Beat reporter for WURD Radio. Will be joining us here weekly on Reality Check to talk about the 2020 election and the postmortem, the aftermath. I think we're going to kind of create a rhythm with this, Sojourner. I'll try to do this every Wednesday at the top of the show. Really appreciate your work and your time on this, Sojourner. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. At Sojourner Ahebi, by the way, on social media, on Twitter, if you'd like to follow her there, or at onWURD to catch or to capture glimpses of her reporting. She's been doing some on-the-street video reporting. Also, you've been hearing her throughout in terms of various vignettes. You've been hearing audio vignettes throughout the course of WURD programming with her voice, where she's been doing some of that reporting, so some excellent work there. Okay, let's take a break here on Reality Check. We're in our midweek edition. And I think we have Nathan Benefield is supposed to be coming up next. He's the Vice President, COO for the Commonwealth Foundation. I want to talk about the state of the Pennsylvania budget, the Pennsylvania state budget. There's a lot of changes there. State budgets will be tight, of course, heading into a new year and still in the middle of pandemic. So let's take a break and we'll bring back Nathan here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word, no, not the station, but this word, J-O-B that is, and our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. Keeping you informed. As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get no-cost, barrier-free COVID-19 testing this week. These locations offer free flu shots and coronavirus testing. Monday, November 30th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. at SEPTA Fern Rock Transportation Center, 11th Street and Nedrow Avenue in Philadelphia. Tuesday, December 1st from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. at SEPTA Fraser Yard, 32 Sproul Road in Malvern. Thursday, December 3rd from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. at Mastery Charter School Pickett Campus, 5700 Wayne Avenue in Philadelphia. And Saturday, December 5th from 12 noon to 4 p.m. at Mastery Charter School Shoemaker Campus, 5301 Media Street in Philadelphia. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, Nathan Benefield is Vice President, Chief Operating Officer for the Commonwealth Foundation for more information. You want to go to commonwealthfoundation.org. They always take time to look at the state of Pennsylvania's or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's budget. Obviously, this is going to be a very treacherous time for state capital budgets, for state government budgets. We don't talk about that enough. We don't focus on that enough. And in fact, state government, state legislatures, governors are hoping they can get some kind of assistance from the federal government in this latest round of pandemic economic relief talks. But Nathan here to offer a little bit of perspective on that and offer some more context and some insights as to what's happening with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's budget. He's joining us by Skype here on Reality Check. Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
All right, good. Appreciate your time this morning. So what's the current state of the PA budget right now?
So the state of the budget, as you know, the state Commonwealth runs on a fiscal year from July 1 through June 30th, not calendar year. Normally that means they would have a budget in place July 1st. This year, they basically provided enough funding to keep the state running for 5 months and then said we're going to figure it out after the election. And then 2 weeks ago, they came back in and finalized a state budget that provides enough funding to keep everything running through next June with about $36 billion in state spending.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, things just don't look very good right now. You had said something, because you all have done an analysis on this. People can go to commonwealthfoundation.org for more there. How exactly, because you were talking in that report and then that briefing, you were talking about the state coming up with additional spending, right? And that's happening. That seemed kind of peculiar to me, like for a state to mention or for you to identify additional spending during a pandemic when all these state budgets are slim right now. I'm a little bit confused by that, but if you can clarify, I'd appreciate it. What does that mean exactly?
Essentially, with the pandemic, the state had lost about an estimated something around $5 billion in revenue from businesses being closed, workers being unemployed, not paying taxes. Now that has bounced back a little bit, so I think that was not quite as bad as was expected. And then they were able to piece together some things, one using federal revenues that came in from the CARES Act, and additional support for federal matching of the Medicaid program. And some of that is concerning because it's a one-time source of revenue that's not going to be there next year. It's going to be a challenge next year. And then they were able, there's another number of things that we call the Commonwealth, we call it the shadow budget, that's kind of outside the normal budget, ongoing programs and expenses that are basically on autopilot in special funds. And a lot of those funds had reserves. So they're maybe able to transfer a few $100 million from these other reserve funds to help fill that budget gap and be able to basically increase spending year over year using a combination of one-time revenue sources and a few spending. There were a few spending cuts in some areas, while an overall increase.
That's interesting. Shadow budgets. The way that you described that, or that term, that might alarm some people when they hear that. Is that something that the state can do, like set aside money like that? I mean, are they really transparent about these shadow budgets and letting people know, hey, there's a lot more additional money out there?
Yeah, it's somewhat. Yeah, it's not very transparent because they set up often redirecting, whether it's income tax or sales tax, to these special funds. Some of the big ones would be mass transit programs. There's a Keystone Parks and Recreation Fund that takes some of the realty transfer tax. But over the years, they've created some of these additional funds that are off budget. They automatically get funded. And it really takes out a lot of legislators' oversight of those and the ability to kind of prioritize spending, because they're not voting on that spending every year. It's something that we think, hey, while these may be very well-deserving causes, lawmakers should have that oversight and be voting on prioritizing all taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, those sound like honeypots.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously there are groups who are lobbying for, like, hey, we want our own dedicated funding source, so we have to fight every year for funding. Give us a set aside, and that's how these things have happened over the years. Yeah,
I mean, you could just, like, that's a cookie jar, like, just dip into it. And that's a recipe for, like, some trouble there. Have we seen? I don't want to go too off track on this, but just one last question. Have we seen instances of, or have you all sort of explored whether or not there have been any discrepancies or any like misappropriation of those shadow budget funds? Or
I mean, not necessarily like actual fraud that we've seen, but we've certainly seen things where we really question whether we should be spending money on things like golf courses. Is that really the priority of the state spending? And some of these things are dedicated for spending like that.
Yeah, until you play golf,
I do play golf, but I just don't think taxpayers should pay for that.
You're like, wow, I really love these golf courses, right? But no, but I'm just just playing with you. But go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, but those are some of the purposes. Like we question whether is that the best use of taxpayer money? Should it be the priority, especially when times like these where the state is hurting and some of the core functions of government might have to be cut while we're funding whether it's corporate subsidies or golf courses or things that really don't seem like they should be the priority.
Got it. Nathan, you're arguing here that CARES Act dollars, those are the federal CARES Act dollars, those are the stimulus dollars that were last passed from pandemic recovery relief. I mean, that was that initial phase of pandemic recovery relief dollars. We're reaching the link's end of all of that. There's some hope that some of these bipartisan conversations that are happening on Capitol Hill, there's this very small group of, I think it's Senator Joe Manchin out of West Virginia, Mitt Romney out of Utah, Susan Collins out of Maine. They're coming up with the $908 billion figure. I guess that's going to be part of the continuing resolution that we're expecting or anticipating by the December 11th deadline to prevent the federal government from shutting down. But these CARES Act dollars, you're saying that they can't be used unless they're for COVID-related costs, but that you can't plug revenue holes with it. But I mean, some folks might ask, well, why not? Because the revenue gaps that states and cities are experiencing right now, they were caused by a pandemic. They did not anticipate this earlier on before the pandemic. States and cities that sat down, they had carved out their budgets, everything seemed smooth, and then pandemic happened. And so they had to revise those budgets. So, I mean, we can make the argument, couldn't the governor, couldn't the state legislature make the argument that, hey, these gaps are created by the pandemic?
And that's some of the arguments that they've tried to make. And when I say they can't be used, this was when the CARES Act was passed. It was within that law itself that, hey, this is money that is to aid, local governments, aid hospitals.
Yeah.
It's discretionary for the state, but it is to aid with the additional costs of dealing with coronavirus, not to fund. And it was very explicit, like it can't just be used to fund what you already budgeted for for states. And that was kind of the intent of the legislation, intent of Congress. So there's kind of some stretching in what the state is interpreting that as what is simply plugging the revenue hole versus what is funding actual costs of the coronavirus. And it'll be kind of up to the U.S. Treasury to determine if that's legitimate. There had been earlier this year, they had decided to use about $200 million of that money to fund property tax relief, which was normally that comes from gambling revenues. People couldn't gamble with the casinos closed this summer, so they said like, hey, we'll use CARES Act to fill that gap. And the U.S. Treasury did say that was not legal under the CARES Act limits.
Got it. How is PA faring, or at least in terms of the budget? How is it faring compared to other states? Have you been able to assess that?
Yeah, we're somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I mean, there are some states where the economy has really tanked, much higher unemployment numbers, either because of kind of more stringent restrictions or states that are very dependent on tourism that have seen that drop. And there are states that are doing quite well, that have almost fully recovered. So we're kind of in the middle of that. And as you mentioned with discussions in Washington, D.C., there are some states who have basically gone to Washington, D.C. and said, if we don't get more help, we can't balance our budget. Like, we need to bail out. There are others who said, hey, we don't need any help. Stop doing it. And Pennsylvania's kind of in the, hey, we would like more help, but we found a way to balance it given what we've got right now.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. How another thing too. I think we had the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican out of Kentucky. He suggested that states just file for bankruptcy.
That is something that's been discussed in previous years of like, are there states that should do that? cities have done that. I know Detroit has been one of the cities that filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
There isn't really a provision for states to do that, but there are some who are in kind of that boat. Illinois being one of those states that is really, potentially, facing insolvency.
Yeah, yeah. What is that? What do you think of that, Nathan? I wonder about that. Of states seeking bankruptcy, I mean, is that a viable path?
I think there needs to be some discussion of how that would work. I think it should be explored. There are, obviously, bankruptcy sounds very scary, but on the business side of it, businesses have been able to go into bankruptcy and come out okay by restructuring some of their debt, and addressing those issues that way. I think there probably should be some sort of process or the equivalency of bankruptcy for states, especially those that are in serious financial trouble. Yeah,
probably restructuring. Like we just need to restructure the debt, y'all. So yeah, it sounds very ominous, bankruptcy, but I guess it's I don't know, there could be an opportunity here for a state to kind of clean the books, start off from a clean slate, right? Or create a clean slate. But then we have to wonder, okay, well, what would be the impact on residents? What would be particularly on vulnerable residents or communities that rely on state services disproportionately, low-income folks in the state? That's something to worry about. The other thing I know you all are really concerned about is the potential for tax hikes. Do we see those in the next fiscal year? Because I know people listening in are like, okay, well, does this mean that my taxes are going to go up? People just heard. In fact, I see a couple of people on WURD TV, on our Facebook Live. They're like, shadow budget, what? Like, explain. So that's why I was asking you about. Oh, hey, you're going to have a couple of listeners out there. They're going to hear that word, shadow budget, and going to wonder. So they're wondering about tax hikes, of course.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns with this budget, and how much of it was, how much of the spending is reliant on funding sources, whether CARES Act funding or additional federal funds that are not going to be there next year, and how are we going to be able to bridge that gap? The hope is the economy bounces back and it's a great year next year, and we can continue to spend at these levels without raising taxes. But there's, I think a lot of concern on our part that when we get into next year, get towards June, when the end of the fiscal year is, that there will be another gap, and there will have to be some tough decisions about whether to cut spending, whether to raise taxes, or finding other alternative ways of filling that gap again.
Yeah. So something to keep a close eye on. Do you think that this is going to be a fairly contentious upcoming year, top of the year session of the Pennsylvania legislature?
Yeah, I would expect it to continue to be contentious. You have, basically the same dynamic you've had this past year with a Democrat governor who's, now got 2 years left, and Republicans in control of the House and Senate. They've had a number of contentious issues over the last year. In fact, I noted recently that Governor Wolf has now basically had the most number of vetoes in any year in 40 years. Kind of give the kind of number of contentious issues where there's not agreement, and I think you're going to see that going into 2021 of some strong disagreements between the governor and the legislature. Right.
That's essentially going to be, and I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch with you, Nathan, as they go through all of that. If it's one thing that we keep track of here on Reality Check and an element of government that we talk to quite a bit, it's the state. It's the state capitals. People just do not pay enough attention, or if at all, to what's happening in state capitals like Harrisburg. So we try to keep track of that, so people are aware, and people are also voting more in these state legislative races. I don't think people understand, like, truly what happens or occurs in Harrisburg, where that balance of power. So we have to keep a close eye on it. So we'll bring you back on, Nathan. Really appreciate this. We've been talking with Nathan. We've had him on before, Nathan Benefield. He's Vice President, Chief Operating Officer of the Commonwealth Foundation. Go to commonwealthfoundation.org for more information, and also to get the latest assessment and analysis of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's budget, where it's headed as we go into a new year, a new administration in Washington, and more pandemic. Thanks again, Nathan. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll just open up the phone lines again, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. 0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Hi, my name is Roberto Perez, and I'm the CEO of Hilco Redevelopment Partners, the new owner of the old PES refinery. Like so many of you, we're excited to clean up and completely reimagine this 1,300-acre property as a new economic engine for growth. This incredible piece of property has two competitive advantages: its physical infrastructure that includes highway, river access, rail, airport, and energy assets, and the outstanding labor force of Philadelphia. The future has arrived. Learn more at hrpphilly.com.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Also, don't forget about the 5th annual WURD Empowerment Experience. The WURD Empowerment Experience is on Friday, December 4th. That starts at 1 p.m. It will be happening across all WURD channels here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, also on WURDradio.com, WURD TV, and WURD app. We will be, 1, celebrating the history and impact of Black radio in Philadelphia, and 2, also honoring the life, the legacy, the contributions of radio icon Cody Anderson. So we're going to be celebrating Cody Anderson as well. In fact, we'll have his son Bill Anderson. We'll have the likes of Kenny Gamble and Iyanla Vanzant and others who will be joining us and presenting or offering some presentations about Cody Anderson, the contributions that he's made here on WURD radio and just throughout the city of Philadelphia. He's made quite some historic contributions, and so we'll be honoring him as well during our empowerment experience. We also have a WURD host panel that's going to be happening. I'll be on that with my colleagues here on WURD radio. That's at 1. That's scheduled for about the 1:15 or so. Cody Anderson will be on that panel as well. We'll be talking about Black radio and also asking questions of Cody Anderson and his experience in radio, in broadcast, get some of his thoughts on that. Also, there's musical presentations, poetry, all sorts of things that are planned, that are happening. Now, this is all free. It's a virtual experience, obviously, because we're in the middle of the pandemic, but it's all free. You do have to register on WURDradio.com. So do go to WURDradio.com, find out more about that empowerment experience, and register so you can get the full empowerment experience. So register today. Go to WURDradio.com. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Just going to Facebook Live here, just seeing a few or several comments, and want to say good morning back or holler back at a few of our regular viewers and listeners. Judith Hartwell Sanders, good morning to you. Thank you. We appreciate that. Malcolm White watching and listening from Westmount area. Good morning back at you. Thanks for watching us every morning. Good morning to you, Gary Bryant. Gary Bryant was one of those folks who was asking, what is a shadow budget? Please ask your guest to explain thoroughly. It doesn't sound good or ethical at all. Yeah, we did ask him, so I hope you heard that, Gary, because that raised my brow as well. Gary also asking, are states getting their fair share from the federal government? Also, how is the federal government managing our tax dollars. So that's that. Well, you know, we're going to continue to assess that, especially as we head into in January, expecting a new session of Congress. A slimmer Democratic majority in the House. We don't know what the balance of power will be in the Senate until we get that Georgia Senate race on January 5th. Those 2 Senate seats that are up, so we don't kind of know what the situation is. We do know that there's some movement that's happening. Yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did sit down, did meet with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. That has not happened in months. So the fact that they sat down is a promising signal that there is some sort of coronavirus relief, or at least temporary bridge relief that is being planned, something to at least get the country, get those folks who are facing expired unemployment benefits, get them through the rest of December, get them all the way. In fact, some of the details that I've been hearing about this compromise that's being put together is that funding will be extended, relief funding will be extended till April, or through to April, and then they'll work out a much more, by that time they'll have had chiseled out a much more long-term package. The compromise we're hearing, the figure we're hearing is $908 billion, $908 billion, so just shy of $1 trillion. That's worked out as a bipartisan compromise. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would only like for benefits to be extended by 1 month. He's only concerned about a bill or crafting a compromise that seeks to keep businesses out of liability, so businesses will not get sued by employees or by consumers who feel that businesses have not adequately prepped or adequately responded to coronavirus, or not adequately operated during coronavirus, and have, for one reason or the other, been blamed for people getting infected. So that's all he's concerned about, and he doesn't want to give any aid to states and cities. That's where Senator Mitch McConnell is right now, but they're hoping that they can kind of craft out a compromise and do eventually get some. The other thing that Mitch McConnell is worried about is the wild card, and that is President Trump, because you pass something in the House, then here we go, ABCs of civics. You pass something in the House, then it goes to the Senate has to pass it, and then the president has to sign it. That's how a bill becomes law, right? It's a little bit of Schoolhouse Rock for you. I'm just a bill, one lonely bill. So I mean, that's just how it works, y'all, right? A lot of people don't understand that, and I have to keep it very elementary. So when you hear about things, I don't know why, like, for example, when Democrats pass something in the House, they're like all celebratory and clap. We passed something. Like, you didn't pass it yet. Like, it has to get signed by the president. It's not law yet. Stop celebrating, because you're giving people false impressions there. Like when they passed that $3.4 trillion package back in May, and it's been sitting on the Senate Majority Leader's desk, and now they're just barely getting $900 billion out of it, out of that like initial $3.4 trillion that they passed. So anyway, that's the wild card, is President Trump, and he's in his feelings right now because he lost the election, and he keeps spreading falsehoods about voter fraud and saying that the election was rife with all sorts of discrepancies and fraud, which is not the case. Even folks in his own party are saying that. But that's where things stand. So Mitch McConnell is worried about. He's wondering, okay, well, what exactly does the president? What does he want? What will he sign? Because we could go through all of this, and then it gets to the president's desk, and it just sits there, and then also we have to worry about the December 11th deadline. They're trying to get this done by December 11th, so the federal government doesn't shut down. That could be a true apocalypse right there, if the federal government shuts down. So everything's we're all watching. The clock is ticking. It's December 2nd now, and so we're watching to see what's going to happen over the next 9 days. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Speaking of falsehoods and also conspiracy theories, so let's address that right now. So Nasir Butler, I really appreciate you always viewing us and watching us, and good morning back at you. Nasir Butler always joins us here on Reality Check, one of our listeners. He says, good morning, Charles, peace and blessings back at you. I appreciate that, Nasir. This is Nasir Butler, did hear that they have a chip in each vaccine syringe so that they can track it track each with an RFID serial number. Okay, so the key word there, and notice how I emphasize that when I quoted or cited Nasir's question, in. And that's where the conspiracy theories start, right? And excuse me here. So let me just fact check this. All right. The there will be something called RFID microchips. They will be on the outside of the syringe. There are no people will not be injected with microchips when they start taking coronavirus vaccine. That is just patently false. But there are people out there who do think that there's a conspiracy theory that's floating about, giving people the impression that they will be not only injected by coronavirus or COVID-19 vaccine, but they'll be also injected by microchips, which will track them. That is not the case. The chips are on the outside of the syringe, and it's simply to track the syringes and to track the vaccine's usage. So it's just like how you have, you want to make sure too that these syringes, that there are no shenanigans and people aren't stealing syringes. Different government agencies aren't overusing or mishandling the syringes. You want to keep track of those syringes because this is some really valuable and important vaccine. If I was making the vaccine, if I was a federal government, I would want to track those syringes too. I mean, I'll just be dead honest with you, real talk. I would want to have put whatever you need, use whatever technology is available to track the syringes. That's what this is for. So the Defense Department had awarded this, it was like a $140 million contract to this company called Apiject Systems. And Apiject Systems is producing syringes for a COVID-19 vaccine, just the syringes. And, this is all part of this Operation Warp Speed effort, to get the vaccine fast, but you have to have a particular type of syringe ready to start to inject people with that vaccine. The chip will be under the label of the syringe on the outside, okay, physically. And healthcare workers are going to have the option of tagging it with their phones. So that's going to allow them to upload a date, a time, and the GPS location of each vaccination in real time. They want to, one, keep track of the syringes, and two, they want to map where vaccination is happening. They have to keep track of where this vaccination is happening. Has like the city of Philadelphia, for example, been vaccinated enough? Because they're going to look at data on one side and they're going to see, oh, hey, we see X thousands of people infected with coronavirus in Philadelphia, but the vaccine shows that, oh, only X thousands of people got vaccinated. So we need to align that. We need to make sure we're eradicating this virus throughout the city of Philadelphia. That is the purpose of the syringe. That is the that's the verifiable, confirmed fact regarding the RFID microchip. You will not be injected. None of us will be injected with an RFID microchip. Let me go to Tyrone out of North Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Tyrone?
Yes. Peace and blessings, good brother.
Peace.
And how are you today, Brother Charles?
I'm good. Thank you.
Brother Charles, again, man, I want to continue my conversation from when I last talked with you. Mm-hmm. Just listening today, on the Solomon Jones show, and we keep hearing all the things that we are up against, and we hear very seldom about what we can do to battle all these things we are up against.
Yeah, I agree.
And, Brother Charles, and I got to applaud you, man, because I really love the playbook that you are using in terms of, sharing your information, feeding your information, and again, your analytical analysis of what you hear and what people share with you. And I love it when you are on with a Reverend Al, because for whatever reason, your sharpness become more sharper when you are, discussing, I guess, on a national plane as opposed to, what we are facing here in this city. And my point that I keep trying to raise up is that I believe that if people get more in tune, more in touch, and more involved and participate in the processes, that we will have a better opportunity to ride through many of the things that we are going through. And Brother Charles, you're always listening to me, man, and I just want to make sure that I'm, speaking as clear as possible, because I'm not using, okay, thank you, brother, because I'm not using a lot of, the facts and figures. I'm just using, how we are living. And I really, really believe, Brother Charles, that we have an opportunity to, override the institutionalized racism. We have an opportunity to override the lack of education that they talk about our children going through this education system. And we have the ability to override, like many of the conversations today about we're being locked out of the resources in terms of, the building industry, in terms of how the dollars that come in that's supposed to come in to address our concerns never really get to us. Now, can I just give an example which, I don't do often? But
and you know what? And I actually, and I wish I could, Tyrone. We ran out of time though because we got going to the 11 o'clock hour. But do check in with us tomorrow though, because I want you to share that story with. I appreciate everything that you were saying. You're absolutely right, and sometimes you don't need all those facts and figures or that data to make that point. I thought you were very crystal clear. You're absolutely right. And there is an opportunity. There's a big opportunity moment right now for people to make that kind of change, to make that kind of permanent change. So we'll talk more. I appreciate that, where you're going with that, Brother Tyrone. I really do. I'm sorry I got to let you go. I got to cut off because I'm going a little up on the clock here. So let me take a break. Sorry about that, Troy. And we'll come back at 11 o'clock. Julianne Schrader-Ortega of the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society is going to come on and talk about food insecurity. They're doing some work to stock up food pantries throughout Philadelphia and throughout the region. So let me take a break, and we'll be right back with Julianne here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
To all caregivers and seniors, are you tired of the fake promises and looking for a home care agency that really cares about you and delivers on promise? Abington Caregivers, Inc. has a sign-on bonus for you. At Abington Caregivers, you come first. Call us today, 215-600-3434 for all your home care needs. We service Philadelphia, Bucks, and Montgomery County. Call 215-600-3434. Abington Cares.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. If your heating and cooling system is more than 20 years old, it may be time for your contractor to replace it with a high-efficiency Energy Star certified model. You'll get a rebate from Pico and save on your monthly electric bill. You'll find a list of new heating and cooling system rebates at pico.com/rebates. Or you can call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE for all the details. Plus, find instant discounts on smart thermostats and more at pico.com/marketplace. There's free shipping on orders over $49.
WURD family. Join us Friday, December 4th from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. for our 5th annual Empowerment Experience. And this year, we'll celebrate the history and impact of Black radio in Philadelphia by honoring radio icon Cody Anderson. featuring a WURD host roundtable. Music by Jack Drummond and Taylor Samuel. Presentations by Iyanla Van Zandt, Kenny Gamble, Bill Anderson, Deanna Williams, Dr. Lucille Ijoy, and more. This virtual event and live broadcast is free. Add a holiday gift box, including a WURD mask, souvenir mug, and holiday flair for $35. $20 for 4 WURD members. For more information or to RSVP, visit wordradio.com. Sponsored by Pico, Keystone Plus, Pennsylvania Lottery, Einstein, Dedicated Senior Medical Centers, and TML Communication. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Back here on our midweek edition, and getting ready to talk about food insecurity. A little bit of eco-word session here on Reality Check, talking with the Chief of Healthy Neighborhoods for the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. Go to phsonline.org. From where there, Julianne Schrader-Ortega joins us by phone here on Reality Check, talk about their new food pantry initiative. Julianne, how are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this and appreciate the work here. So talk about this food pantry initiative. What's the goal and how is it being administered?
Sure. So PHS, we created with partners this initiative that we're calling Harvest 2020. It's really a collective effort to mobilize people to grow and share food with our families, our neighbors, and through donations to local food pantries. And we're really trying to get as many people involved as possible. We've invited everyone to get involved and made it really easy for people to participate. And so far, we've had over 10,000 people join in. And people can join by acting as a grower, so growing food for yourselves, your families, sharing it with your neighbors or through donations to local food pantries. And then also you could join in as a donor who supports us in helping others to use gardening to improve the health and well-being of the region.
Okay,
So,
got it. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so we've partnered with, anybody can get involved, and we've also partnered with community-based organizations like the Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden and Nicetown CDC and Tioga United, and together we've worked to provide tools to help increase food sovereignty and help promote and support networks of self-reliance for people to grow food for themselves and their neighbors.
Okay, got it. How much you're talking about with this program, or at least with this latest iteration of or now like phase of the Harvest 2020 program, you're donating, well, the whole 2020 initiative is donating over 33,000 pounds of produce. So talk about that scale and like how that's proportioned out to different families. Like, are you all looking at like how much food will each family or each household get? Are you kind of calculating it that way?
No, this really has been a pretty decentralized approach.
Okay.
We're really trying to just get everybody excited about and make sure they have the resources that they need to grow food and share it in their community. And we have asked people to tell us if they made donations and send in how many pounds they donated. To tell you the truth, we've tracked about 34,000 pounds, which is amazing. But we've also done surveys where only about 40% of the people that have participated said that they actually tracked their produce. But I think it's even a lot more. And what we did was we tried to make it so PHS isn't really the one that's picking up the produce and figuring out where to go. We really just tried to give people access to resources. So we had a map on our website that showed where are the soup kitchens, food pantries in your neighborhood, what days would they want to accept produce, what are the kinds of things that they need, what's the number, so that people could really set up these connections themselves with their neighbors. And again, like you could decide to give it to a food pantry. You could also just share it with your neighbors.
Got it.
So really trying to help give access to folks to grow food for themselves and share it in their communities however they feel is the most effective way.
Yeah, I like this. And people can go to phsonline.org/harvest2020, correct? If they want to, learn, they want to track where produce is being distributed. There's like a map an interactive map. It's a live interactive map. I'm looking at it now. And you can get the number of produce donations by zip code, et cetera, where people can go. So you're trying to make this as accessible as possible. And just trying, it's just basically, serving as like sort of a centralized coordinating resource. And we do need that's one of the things that we sometimes don't have enough of in a time like this. It's just like a one place or one-stop shop that people can go to just get the information, to get it easily, just making, and that seems to be like always a battle, making that information accessible. So this is good. How bad
we try to do it through the lens of a gardener or somebody who wants to be a gardener and grow food, because there are a lot of amazing organizations in the region, like Greater Philadelphia Coalition Against Hunger or SHARE and Philabundance, that are working to address hunger issues across the region. So they helped us. They were huge partners in helping to make sure we had the connections with the soup kitchens, food pantries, and even to help us make sure that we were giving the gardeners information about what is the best kind of produce to grow that's most useful, what's the best way to, package it up and drop it off that would not be a burden on the volunteers running these food outlets.
Yeah, and Julianne, also tell us too, what do the studies say? What's the research show as far as like the impact of, urban farming or, people being more self-sufficient and producing their own food, how that helps tackle food insecurity, how that helps to reduce or mitigate hunger?
There's been, I think, community gardens and urban agriculture play a really important role in helping people to address food insecurity and also make their neighborhoods more livable and better connect with their neighbors. And all those factors really help impact our health and how we are as a neighborhood and a community. So growing food, I think one of the greatest things about growing your own food, whether it's in your, on your stoop in your backyard or in a community garden, is that you can grow crops and foods that are important to you and your family and your culture. So I think in the process of actually growing food and makes you want to eat more food and makes you increase the amount of fruits and vegetables you actually consume. There's been studies that show that. And it's really important in helping kids to also get excited about eating different vegetables and foods. So I think there is a lot of benefits to being able to grow like culturally appropriate food that's important to you and your heritage. And then when you eat fresh garden produce, it's just like, it can't be beat really. So it helps really motivate people to incorporate more vegetables into their diets. And then, just the fact of growing foods helps you not have to go out and buy it. And especially in certain parts of our city where there isn't great markets with beautiful local produce, it's really important for us to be growing it for ourselves and our neighbors too.
No, I agree. How does that address the or how do you think that helps to address also the cost issue? Because that's another issue. You're dealing with food deserts in a lot of distressed, low-income, vulnerable neighborhoods in a city like Philadelphia, throughout a region like Philadelphia. Black, Latino neighborhoods, especially Black neighborhoods, don't have access to grocery stores or grocery retailers where they can get solid food, where they can get nutritious food. If they do get access, then that food is like the nutritious food you just talked about, the nutritious food that like you eat, that like I eat, that some of us out there eat to keep healthy. It's expensive, right? These are like kind of basic fruits and vegetables, but it can be really expensive if you go to like a grocery store and you're looking for like organic produce, for example, or looking for the healthiest items. It can be on some levels, depending on the retailer you go to, it can be pricey. Do you think that this addresses that pricing problem or that cost problem?
Yeah, I see like the ability to provide for oneself, one's family, and one community with fresh and healthy food is really a basic human right. Really there is a lack of healthy food, and it's a huge problem in our region, in our city. And when you are able to really grow these networks of people growing and sharing food for themselves, it does make it more cost effective. I don't think you're going to take care of all of your food needs by in a little backyard garden or in a community garden plot, but it definitely helps supplement what you're able to bring in, and it does give you access to the super fresh, healthy, nutritious produce. And PHS has a long history of working with community gardens. For over 50 years, we've been working with gardeners who have taken over vacant lands in our city and really turned them into community assets. And what we've found is, sometimes it's hard to get access to certain materials that are more easy to get when you're outside the city, like something to cover your crops in order to protect them from pests. Like, you can't really go to your corner store and get row cover. So PHS has tried to do things like bring in those kinds of organic growing materials that really help make it easier to have super productive, abundant harvests that you can help feed your families and also have enough to share. We've also set up these community-based greenhouses across the city. Again, local partners like Share and Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden, Aubrey Arboretum, and others to grow seedlings, organic seedlings, so that way gardeners who are committed to sharing the produce, they can come a few times a year, pick up the seedlings that they need and grow them out in their gardens and then donate the produce. And, and that also is a really localized grassroots effort where the gardeners pick a local food agency. We can help support them with Share and others if they need help. But for instance, gardeners at Glenwood Green Acres have been growing food for a group called Grands as Parents, where grandparents are serving as the guardians for their grandkids. And that has been a partnership that this community garden has set up for years. And it really provides amazing produce for these Grams as parents, as well as the greater community there.
I want to take an opportunity here too, if I could, while we still got you for a while, Julianne. We're talking with Julianne Schrader Ortega. She's Chief of Healthy Neighborhoods for the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, phsonline.org for more information. Also, phsonline.org/harvest2020, so you can get access to this information, to what she's talking about, and find out ways in which you can help mitigate food insecurity throughout the community, food insecurity, hunger throughout the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia region, or how you can help mitigate it in your own household if you're dealing with that or struggling with access to food. I just want to open it, just in case anybody has any questions about this, Julianne. I'm just going to put the phone number out here: 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900, while we have Julianne for a little bit, in case you have any questions about Harvest 2020 or how you can get involved with it. How bad is the food insecurity sort of situation right now in Philadelphia, Julianne, from where you're sitting, from where you're standing? Like, how really severe is it, particularly in the middle? Because it was already bad before the pandemic. I haven't gotten the latest numbers on how severe it's gotten during pandemic.
Yeah. Well, as you say, for decades, many of our neighbors live in homes where they don't have access to enough food to live healthy, active lives. Yeah. And Philly was ranking before COVID in the top 10 U.S. cities with food insecure residents. So there's still a lot to learn about how COVID has and is going to impact hunger. What we do know that, no matter what decisions are being made that weigh economic costs against the precautions and to limit the spread of COVID and save people's lives, our most vulnerable members of our neighborhoods are in a position to fare the worst. So neighbors who are at the highest risk for serious illnesses associated with COVID, whether they're seniors, people of color, people with chronic diseases, are in many cases the same people whose lives are really being terribly affected by economic recession brought on by COVID and this pandemic-related job loss that many of us are dealing with. So, I think there's still a lot to learn, but Hunger America released a report this fall that was trying to project the impact of COVID on food insecurity rates. And in this report, they said that before COVID, in 2018, 16.3% of Philadelphians lived in food insecure households. They're estimating that it'll go up to nearly 22% in 2020. So it's made it worse for people who were already experiencing food insecurity before the pandemic, while piling on people who are newly experiencing food insecurity due to COVID-related job loss or illness associated with the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. I know the pantries are overwhelmed. I assume. I mean, have they established some sort of rhythm? Since we've gone through about 6 months worth of pandemic.
Yeah, when we were reaching out in the beginning to try to set up Harvest 2020, they were saying some of them are experiencing 50% more demand for their services, and it was super challenging because a lot of these are run by volunteers, and some of the volunteers are especially vulnerable to COVID. So we did try to make it as easy as possible for them, for these volunteers, and for the people who work at food pantries and soup kitchens to accept produce. I think that they were telling us, like Phil Abundance, for instance, was spending a lot of money trying to purchase produce to supplement some of the more canned, shelf-stable items that they had for donations.
Yeah.
So I think really getting people to grow and share produce is a huge way that we all can make a difference in our neighborhoods right now.
Yeah, no, it's it's because it's real important. In case you still have questions, we got for a couple more minutes. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Actually, we're going to be letting you go in about a couple of minutes. Actually, Julianne, real quick, I do have one other question here. The stigma, right? Even in a pandemic, there's this stigma that's attached to getting or securing free food or going to a pantry. There's people still have this they can't shake that feeling. There's this there's a number of reasons for that. Pride is one of them. It gets particularly worse when you have like a middle class or a lower middle income family that suddenly realizes that, I can't do this on my own. I'm going to have to go to a food pantry. But it's like just the whole stigma. Oh, one of my neighbors or a family member or a friend or a coworker see me, because there are people hungry but even have a job, but they just can't put enough food on the table. What are you doing about that? Like, how is that being addressed?
Well, I'm especially proud of the work that we're doing in partnership with some community-based organizations like the Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden.
Yeah.
While we're realizing that there are communities in our city that are disproportionately experiencing the impacts of COVID-19, including the associated need for greater food sovereignty, we have been working to provide tools for self-reliance now and for the future by supporting people's efforts to grow their own food. So, if you have your own garden, if you're able to grow in a community garden, it reduces the need for you to have to go to a soup kitchen food bank. But I also think all of our efforts on just trying to destigmatize this is super important because like I said before, the right to take care of yourself and feed yourself and your families is a basic human right, and we all need to work together as a community to make it possible for all of our neighbors to meet this basic human right.
Exactly. No, I totally agree with you on that. We're going to have to work through that. People are going to have to cut through that, especially during a time like this. And folks who aren't in need of food have to be particularly sensitive to people who are in need of food. So, we have to walk that walk. You can't just talk like, oh, hey, I'm here to help the community, but then, you give a person who's accessing a pantry, give them the side eye or wonder like, oh, they're here? Like, why? What are they doing here? Like, it's a pandemic and we're in economic tailspin, and people really are going to have to set aside their prejudices and tendency to stigmatize so we can all get through this because I find that particularly, I'm sorry, you're probably hearing my voice, I find that particularly annoying because I've talked to other people in other cities who are saying, there's a stigmatization thing. And I'm like, really? 270,000 Americans that we know of that have died, millions infected, millions of people permanently unemployed, and you guys are like, okay, come on. So I really appreciate this work. Real quick, Woody out of Winfield had a question for you. We'll take him on, Julianne, before we let her go. Woody, how are you doing?
Okay, how you guys doing? Listen, I had a question because Philadelphia is '1 in poverty in the nation, and our educational structure is really thrown off too because the people, real good 25%, are illiterate here in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, in the city. I want to know how are we helping to give that food out so that they can understand what they're ingesting, what they're taking in, having a division of your department to get out to some of these people that are right around City Hall. I mean, there are hundreds of them. Just take a ride around City Hall. They've got carts, they've got bags and sacks on their back. They're homeless people that are hungry. What could you do about that to help them?
Yeah.
A division
Thanks so much for the
set
question.
up so that they could get those fruits and vegetables that if you can't get them to people, that food goes to waste. Those people would be happy to get that.
You got that food waste issue too. Thanks for that question, Woody. I'm going to let you go so I can have Julianne answer that or respond to it.
Yeah, we are really lucky to have such strong partnerships with Fill, Fund, and Share, the Greater Philadelphia Coalition Against Hunger, who are, and also groups like the Broad Street Ministry, who set up, and CMAC in Southwest Philadelphia, who set up this Step Up to the Plate initiative. So I think you're right, and we got to figure out ways to get produce and food to people wherever they are, and if they are homeless and maybe aren't connected with a local soup kitchen, food pantry, then how are we making sure they're getting fresh food? And I think, us trying to, as our role in Gardeners, is really saying, okay, well, how can we all grow as much food as we can and share it right in our community? And if you are know of a homeless agency in your community and you want to be donating produce right there, then how can we help make sure that you're growing as much produce as possible so you have really abundant harvest to share with these local agencies right in your neighborhood?
No, so it's going to be real important work. Julianne, we got to let you go. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch with you and all those folks at the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and, just getting a grasp around exactly what's happening as far as the hunger situation. It's more food insecurity. It's real hunger that's happening in Philadelphia, and we've got to tackle it. We're going to have to be aggressive in how we address this. Julianne Schrader-Ortega is Chief of Healthy Neighborhoods for the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. Once again, go to PHS Online, phsonline.org/harvest 2020. Julianne, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, thank you. Take care. Be safe. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we have a conversation with Torrin Walker of Context Media Group. That's coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lantern flies, termites, bed bugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check, midweek edition. We are on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, but beyond Philly and the Delaware Valley, we are on wordradio.com throughout the nation, throughout the world, and on WURD TV. You're watching us on YouTube, youtube.com/onWURD, or facebook.com/4WURD. You can leave some comments there in both our WURD TV channels and by WURD app as well. I'm at Ellison Report on hashtag Reality Check or hashtag WURD on Politics. We're keeping that going. Torrin Walker joins us frequently here now, regular contributor on Reality Check, WURD. Go to @Torrin Walker on social media, founder, CEO of Context Media Group. Go to contextmediagroup.com. Also subscribe to that newsletter when you get a chance. Check out some great insights, thoughtful and also controversial insights from Torrin Walker. That's why we bring them on. We like to talk with them, and especially on topics such as the state of black men. He joined us for our very successful, productive conversation, because we still got a lot of work to do in that space on the state of black men. That was the last time we talked to you, Torrin. I really appreciate your time back then for that, hanging on with us, and it's good to have you back. Happy after Thanksgiving, as they say. How you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. How about yourself, man?
All right, brother. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. I did want to get your thoughts. I'm real curious to get your thoughts on the Biden transition. So you got the president-elect now. Transition is happening. We got a pandemic going on. We got all these other things. But I'd just like to get your thoughts on how that transit, as you're seeing, all the various announcements being made about what the Biden government or Biden administration will look like as we head into 2021. How do you think all that's going?
I think it's going exactly the way it was supposed to go.
Right.
People went into this election and their main goal was getting rid of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
There was no real conversation about what a Biden administration was really going to do outside of optics. And we've had people who, basically shepherded votes over to the Biden administration for basically nothing, or a couple of jobs, and we're getting exactly what we deserve. You're getting people who are very ingrained in the status quo, some people who might be considered conservative 10 or 12 years ago that look liberal now because we were coming out of 4 years of Trump, but you're just getting what you want, and you're getting what a lot of the moderate people in this country want, somebody who can lull you back to sleep, and you're getting an administration that you can put on cruise control and not think about, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we're getting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, one thing I have noted, and some folks have said, so, just kind of for the sake of conversation here, in terms of the black picks, I know Congressman Jim Clyburn now, he's upset. He feels like, there's not enough senior black picks at the senior levels of this Biden administration as far as cabinet level. I think to address that, we just got an announcement like yesterday that President-elect Biden is going to elevate the chair of the White House Council on Economic Advisors to a cabinet level position. And so there will be there's a black woman, Camelia Rouse, I believe her name is, who's at Princeton. I have an issue with why it always has to be Ivy League, but anyway, that's another conversation. Like, when it's always a Supreme Court justice or a leading economist, it has to always be from an Ivy League school. So I don't understand that.
Yeah,
but
we can get into that. That's a whole other
That's a whole other thing. But anyway, so that would put a black woman at a high level who would be the nation's chief economist. And then we have like black folks, black woman for UN ambassador. There's a brother who's being considered who's at the top of the list for CIA director. And so, there's these like kind of high level, non-traditional black appointments. They're non-domestic, where they're focusing on stuff like economics, and there's even like a couple of brothers being considered on the short list for Department of Defense. You just don't normally see that. So maybe it's not so bad, but I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's great for the people who are going to get picked. It doesn't do anything for the majority of the black voter. And Clyburn is pretty much getting what he asked for. He said he didn't want anything, and he's getting nothing. So this is pretty. So I don't know what he's upset about. Really, what that is, man, is just people in that leadership class, or the people who want to be considered the black leadership class, were upset because they weren't getting the jobs they thought they were going to get by shepherding the black vote over to Biden. So basically what you're seeing is them getting some bones thrown at them, and some of the people who are in their group, who went to Princeton, who went to Ivy Leagues, who played the game and did their, did their scandal thing, are going to be just fine. That doesn't do anything, like I said, for the black electorate, but give us some more people to hope and have some more change about. So that's my feeling about that. It does nothing for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the other question too. I've been having this conversation often on this program, is like, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but it's addressing not just inequities and gaps that are happening during the pandemic, but even before, like just the systemic racism with these institutions. Now, Biden was trying to talk this game that when, hey, I've got black folks back. Hey, I said Black Lives Matter. I can say it. I'm not afraid of saying it. Giving this signal that he's going to address things like systematic racism, or things like poverty, permanent unemployment, housing, affordable housing gaps, etc. But I mean, he's a moderate, he's a centrist. So, there's that worry, that concern about, well, how bold is he going to go? He's going to need to go. Whomever is running the government right now is going to have to go bold if they want to fix these things.
You're not going to get any kind of boldness. You're not going to get any real progressive policy from inside this administration. As always, same as what we saw with Obama 8 years ago, you're going to have people pushing from the outside who are connected to the grassroots, who are connected to the poor and working class to make any movement. This administration is all about the talented 10 getting their what they feel like they deserve. You're going to get some black and brown people, some POC, who are going to give you some representation on a surface level, but it's not going to change anything for the rank and file of black or white people or anybody else in this country. And it's definitely not going to change anything for people overseas as far as foreign policy. Does it really matter what color the person is who pushes the button and sends the drone to your place? It doesn't. It's not doing anything outside of giving people some feel-good moments that we've already had 8 years of, outside of dealing with real policy as far as like what's going to get us out of this pandemic, what's going to really alleviate some of the serious issues that the poor and working class are dealing with right now in the middle of this pandemic, with the winter coming, with eviction freezes and mortgage freezes getting ready to dry up as soon as January 1st hits. That's what people need. Optics aren't going to do it.
Yeah. Let me ask you, so given all that, right, we're looking at this landscape, we're setting expectations, or we're being realistic about expectations heading into 2021, right? What do you think are those unifying themes then for a black agenda? What's the black agenda heading into 2021, right? Because I'm not seeing it yet. I mean, so like, how do we, on multiple levels, we're still going to have to deal with the new administration. We're going to have to figure out ways to navigate around, within, and figure out ways to cut deals with that new governing structure that's coming into Washington. We also have to think about what we need to do on the state and local level. How does that look to you? What's that black agenda, though?
I think what has to happen first and foremost is that there has to be a meeting, if it's a convention or something, where people who are connected to the poor and working class, because those are the majority of black people in America, there has to be some sort of conference where people get together and have a conversation about what do they need. And it can't just be a top-down solution. It can't be people coming from Princeton or coming from the administration talking to people and talking down to them. It has to be people who have a legitimate set of demands that they can present to that administration to see what they want. I think reparations needs to be on that agenda. I think police reform or police defundment needs to be on that agenda, and people need to stop being afraid of saying that, even though the moderates are trying to scare people about that phrase. I think economic empowerment, as far as like grants and loans and land grants for businesses, has to happen. I think there's a lot of different ways you can attack that, but it has to come from the people who are affected by this the most, and they are more than capable of presenting their demands without having a savior come in and try to tell them what to think about and what to say.
Yeah, let's talk about defund the police, right? Because you were talking about that. I like how you kind of laid out that black agenda. I'm envisioning too, sort of and I've been saying this quite a bit and trying to establish maybe a cadence with an overall cadence as far as the conversation. Health, health, wealth, education. Health, wealth, education. Pillar topics. We need to kind of like, because from that, everything kind of flows from that, right? Health, wealth, education. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like, we need that, like that unifying moment, or like it has to be structured. It has to be operationalized, and it has to be ongoing. I'm just not seeing anything like that happening. I do see like the various, classic civil rights groups, Urban League, NAACP, they're all clamoring to meet with Biden, but they're not clamoring to have that kind of conversation that you just described. They should be kind of focused on that. But let me talk about, or let's talk about defund the police, because I want to flesh that out more. And so I agree with the philosophy. Like, I agree, like, every point about the need to deconstruct, reimagine, reform, totally remix the police. But, as someone who just came from political strategy work before I got into this media thing, still do a little bit of political strategy and political messaging work. I still cringe at that phrase, defund the police. I agree with the philosophy. I know where it's coming from. I know what it plans to do. I don't think moderates or centrists like Clyburn or Obama should be scaring people about it. But I do think, I think we're going to have to recalibrate at least that phrase to have a much more successful political conversation, a much more sort of political objective, as far as where we're going with that. But I want to talk with you about that. I know that that's something that I know you like that phrase. I still don't agree with the use of it.
I get that, and I understand that a phrase like that can be scary for people who are not, really affected by police brutality, or may not have an idea, or may not even care about how police procedure affects Black communities, and especially lower class and poor Black communities. Yeah. But honestly, I think that we don't need to be afraid of that phrase. I think it's important to have bold policy, and sometimes do things that are in people's faces to make them aware of the situation, so we can have a conversation about it. Now, as far as what you're seeing now, you're seeing a lot of Black people who are centrist or establishment, and I'm talking about Obama, and other people who are in the establishment who are saying that phrase, what did he say a couple of days ago, that phrase scares people, or it's a little bit too jazzy or something he said? Yeah. We're talking about a man who wrote Yes We Can for 8 years. And that's about as vague a phrase as you can get. And I understand when you're on a political standpoint where you're trying to appeal to a broad range of people, you have to have kind of like vague statements that kind of grab everybody in. But I don't think people need to be afraid. And I think people who are progressive and even radical do not need to be afraid of that. And they really shouldn't have moderates and conservatives scaring them about that, because you got to look at it. Even if you look at the history of social change, every kind of phrase, whether it's socialist or civil rights or even human rights, has scared the hell out of people who are not affected by those issues. You have to you have to stop being afraid of what moderates are saying and stand for the people who are really being affected by that. Now, we can have a conversation about whether it's a phrase that maybe needs to be changed or maybe needs to be revamped. But sometimes people are afraid of language because they want to twist that language into something into a shape that they can, co-opt and use. I think it needs to stay the way it is until we have some real movement about defunding it or even demilitarizing it.
And I understand that, the abolitionist movement, right, before the Civil War, or, even like the years of the decades building up to the Civil Rights movement and the use of certain phrases and slogans back then. But you would still see some of that recalibration of messaging taking place. And I'm coming from also the perspective of someone, who grew up in North Philly, dealt with, personally had some experience with Philadelphia police brutality, for being in spaces where I had every right to be in and was just being harassed, and have seen instances of that. So, but I just feel like there's that need for, we need to restructure, we need to fundamentally alter, maybe even not even call it policing anymore, but you need some kind of public safety function in a civil society. Don't we feel like we need balance in that conversation? Because Black people want a basic level of public safety and public services in their neighborhoods, and they do deserve that. They do earn that. So, I mean, there's just as many Black people as there are suburban white people, suburban or rural white people, who cringe at that term or that phrase, defund the police. And I just feel like it's setting progressives up for some political failures in 2022. Because, so I get you. I think I agree with you. I think defund the police is effective, and we did see it effective in some DA races, some local races in 2020. It helps you win a race in, say, like a city where there's a heavy concentration of black people who've had bad experiences with police. So you can
like
win
Corey
in
Bush,
a situation.
like Corey Bush
Right,
in St.
right,
Louis,
Corey Bush. Exactly. So it can work there, but you're probably going to have to tackle it with different messaging. You can probably sell it. Going to have to do it differently if you're in a suburban district where it's majority white, or a rural district that's majority white. It's probably going to have to tailor the messaging. So, running in, say, St. Louis, Missouri, or Brooklyn, New York is different from running in, say, Allegheny County, or I don't know, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. You see what I'm saying? It's just, you got to kind of recalibrate and shift the messaging a bit. And that's where it becomes problematic.
No, I understand that. And it is true that, every message has to be tailored for every market you're trying to reach out to. I get that part. But my problem with this is a lot of the conversations about tailoring the message are coming from people who are not affected by the police brutality, and they're not affected by people who, and they don't have people who are in these neighborhoods who are being affected by over-policing. They're coming from the top down, from people who haven't been close to that sort of thing in decades. That's what I think the issue is. I think there's a level of condescension that's coming from this, and I think there's also a level of just basic cluelessness and detachment from people like this. If somebody like Obama or somebody like a Clyburn would actually go down to these neighborhoods and talk to people about what they really want and get a feel for what these people are dealing with, maybe there could be a conversation there. But people who are living in poor and working class neighborhoods who are black, yeah, they want a certain level of public safety, but they also want a certain level of respect. And I think some of the problem is people are getting the two conflated. And I think a lot of police departments are getting the two conflated, where they feel like policing needs to be like an occupying army, and that's not how you interact with people. You know what I mean? I think that's what the problem is. So we can have that conversation about maybe changing some of the verbiage. But again, I think the people who are affected by these situations the most have to be a part of that.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on with that assessment. Folks who are making these condemnations of that movement to have to dramatically reform policing, they're going to have direct conversations with those communities on the grassroots level. I think we can't have a both and here. Kind of paraphrasing a listener who said this the other day. I think it was Gary, who was like, black people, yeah, sure. We want policing in our neighborhoods. Who doesn't? But we don't want bad policing. Exactly. They just kept it real simple. We don't want bad policing. And so I think you can get a both and, where you can get that kind of compassionate guardian approach to public safety, that type of policing, that's just fundamentally different from the origins of policing, which was all about slave catching. And at the same time, you can establish public safety. I do worry, Torrin, I want to get your last thoughts on this, because I know you're in Atlanta. All these major cities like Philadelphia, we're about to reach 500 homicides by the end of 2020. Atlanta's dealing with rising gun violence rates. Milwaukee, St. Louis, D.C., everywhere got rising because it's the pandemic, and people are upset. They're angry. They're poor. They're distressed. Yeah. I do worry about that heading into 2021. We're going to go back to the mid-90s all over again because people are going to get stressed out, and they're like, well, what do we do?
No, that's a very real danger, especially in a presidential administration that we have now, because we have people who are in charge of this administration who helped create some of the policies that made the 90s the way they were. But as far as the violence, and as far as the rising issues with gun violence and just violence in general, that's an issue that can't be ignored. But we also have to go back to the roots of that. As you said, a lot of the root of that is because of the economic stress that people are under, and the fact that they're not getting any kind of relief, and they're not, and the federal government and even state and local governments are basically butting heads about what kind of relief you give people. I think that has to be any kind of issue, anything that's going to really curb some of this violence has to be economic. You have to give people either some sort of economic relief, or you have to give people an idea that there's people who are on the inside and the outside who are trying to alleviate this, because when people feel hopeless and they feel desperate and they're trying to figure out where the next meal is coming from, they're going to act out, and they're going to do whatever they feel like they have to do to make that, to try to get some food on the table, whether it's a bad decision or not. That's not excusing that, but we have to address the baseline of the issue before you deal with the punishment part of it. And I don't have a definite answer for that, but there's something has to be done on a local level all the way up to the federal level about that.
Yeah, we've been talking to Torrin Walker, Context Media Group, contextmediagroup.com, @Torrin Walker. More definitely when we get you back on next time, brother, we'll talk more about this. A lot of ground to still cover, and you know, we're bracing for another disruptive year, 2021. I know people are trying to get past 2020, but you brace yourselves for 2021. But that's why we have these continued discussions here with folks like Torrin Walker. Appreciate it. At Torrin Walker on social media. Obviously, go to hashtag reality check. You can catch clips of this conversation. We'll make it available too on social media shortly. Torrin, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Charles. Thank you for having me on again.
All right. I'll talk to you again. Take care. Be safe.
You too.
Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll just have the phone lines open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com. Or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real.
With the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
This program is pre-recorded.
No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, don't forget about that Word Empowerment Experience. That is on Friday, December 4th. That starts at 1 p.m. We are going to celebrate the history and impact of Black radio in Philadelphia, and also we'll be honoring radio icon Cody Anderson. Cody Anderson going to be honored for our empowerment experience this year. Also his son Bill Anderson, also Kenny Gamble, also Iyanla Bazant, and others will be joining us and giving some presentations honoring the legacy that has been left by Cody Anderson in his times in broadcasting. He's done some great work, some tremendous work, so we're going to be celebrating and honoring that. The Word Empowerment Experience is accessible to all. Free registration at wordradio.com. You have to register. So register today, wordradio.com. It is basically we're going to have it virtual across the board on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. You'll be able to listen into it. We even have a Word host roundtable, so listen to that. I'll be on that, joining my colleagues, and we'll be talking with Cody Anderson and talking about his time in radio and the impact that he's had and his thoughts on the impact of Black radio as well in a very special place like Philadelphia. All right, let's go to the phone lines. We got Prince out of Birdsboro, calling us for a reality check. Prince, what's good?
Hi, good morning, Charles. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning.
I have a couple questions to ask you. As far as like the mayors in Philadelphia, PA, do you think that a lot of them are like fundamentalists off of individual beliefs? I know that that's kind of like confusing when they run. They run off of a faceted campaign. But do you think that at least the ones in modern memory, do you think that they focus more on a certain like I'm going to say like a certain do you think that they focus on a certain income bracket, a certain category? And,
like, give me an example. What led you to think
for instance, like you have, like for instance, Kenny, he's more in the real estate and development. Rendell, he was more into law and order. Wilson Good was more in a political organization, but he done things as a city planner that kind of transponded him to being mayor. And is that kind of like do you think that
yeah, I see where you're headed with that. I think so. I think that so to your point, I think you're making a good point here, Prince, and maybe let me try to kind of sort of assess it or translate a little bit because I know where you're headed with this. Overall, I have an issue with candidates and elected officials who focus a lot on or put a lot of excessive focus on the middle class, right? You know, we want to restore the middle class. You know, it's like they're only campaigning for middle class people, but it's not. It's middle class. You know, that's one. So, and that's not just a habit in Philadelphia. That's everywhere. You know, even up to national elections. We're kidding. It's the middle class, and it's like you got to be for everyone. You should be campaigning for, or what is your solution for everyone? Because it's like a lot of low-income people out there, and you know, there's a lot of wage inequality, and poverty is rising, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one. Two, I do notice that is like the case in Philadelphia too. Some of it has to do with the fact that there's low voter turnout still. Like, I mean, the local elections are under.
They don't put a correct, in my opinion. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They don't put a correct. They don't put a correct. They don't put a diversified candidate out, and that candidate probably may need to come from the grassroots level. It may need to come from the neighborhood, and they may need to be sponsored by residents instead of from city council or from from corporate America or something.
Yeah, you need. I think you need those candidates that have a track record of, either shaping policy. So that's fine if there's going to be mayoral candidates, for example, coming from city council, from the state legislature. That's fine, but they've got to have that displayed track record of actually doing that work on a grassroots level. Because I think that is important. I think it's important that the city's elected class find ways to connect with the grassroots. There has to be, I always talk about that there's this disconnect that we're still suffering from, especially in a place like Philadelphia, between the grass tops, the people in places like City Hall, like Harrisburg, and the grassroots, the folks down on the community level. And that constant disconnect, that constant disalignment between those two groups is holding us back. So I think that, it's fine if the next person or persons who are running for mayor are from city council, but it's like, okay, well, what's your track record? What sort of conversation have you been pushing aggressively in terms of tackling head on these issues with respect to poverty? Like, I'll be honest with you, I now want to hear, that's why I've been like constantly talking about it every day now. I feel like the next mayoral candidate who does not have a plan for illiteracy in Philadelphia does not need to be mayor of Philadelphia. Like, if you don't have a plan, I want to hear it like when those first set of mayoral candidates in Philadelphia, when they have their campaign announcements and they give their first speeches, I better hear about illiteracy. Because if I don't hear illiteracy, I'm like, yo, that's not your mayor. Like, I find someone else, because it's tragic, and it is downright it's just sad that there is that much adult illiteracy. I mean, you've got pretty much almost damn near half the city's adults can't read at a functional enough level where they can progress at a rapid pace, where they can progress at a high level. So I mean, I think that has to be addressed spot on. But the poverty, the illiteracy rate, the state of the schools, the violence in the city, and also the array, the smorgasbord of environmental justice issues, the bad air quality, water quality, flooding issues, and all that. That's the kind of, they have to display a track record, and they have to have already been a leader in the conversation on those quality of life issues that especially impact distressed people. It can't just be about middle class. And the problem here, to your point, Prince, is that when you have back-to-back local elections where less than 30% of registered voters in the city of Philadelphia, you got nearly 1.2 million registered voters in the city of Philadelphia, out of a city of 1.6 million people. If you're registered to vote, if there's 1.2 million registered voters in the city of Philadelphia, we should all expect 1.2 million people turning out for every election in the city of Philadelphia. If you're not voting, why are you getting registered? Or is there a problem, or are people getting registered and they think that the registration itself, that is a question I have. Maybe it sounds like a stupid question, but I'm going to throw that out there. Are there people who are registering to vote and they're thinking that in the process of registering, that's the voting? Like that's it? That's all you got to do? Because we have a problem there. So when you have that, you have a situation here where only just about 12% of the entire citywide population, Prince, is voting. So there's only a special class of people that's getting represented. Finish up, Prince. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because you know the thing about it too, that ignites the candidate that has that got the namesake that wins for popularity, and that goes towards like the literacy rate. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person does not know how to read. It could go towards a barrier towards comprehending in various things. Cultural equality, whether it's with the justice system, whether it's with the political system, whether it's with the environmental landscape when it comes time to reform. Because look, the thing about it, I think when they come to, I think the people that structure the budget in Philadelphia is like the managing director, the solicitor, and the mayor. And I don't think that process is followed through clearly based on some of these administrations, and I don't think that they're held to full accountability on it. You know, and that's been the case. I think
I agree with you. I agree with you, Prince. Unfortunately, I have to let you go. But I do not want, like how Torrin just said in the segment before, I don't want talented 10th candidates, and I don't want. I'm tired of. I've been growing up with this all throughout my life, being raised in Philadelphia and seeing it unfold since I was a child. I'm tired of the clique candidates. Philadelphia has got to do away with the political cliques. It's your turn now to run, stand in line before you can run for a certain position. Change can't happen unless, a certain person is at a certain point on the poll. And we as Philadelphians have been too accepting of that. The cliques must be destroyed. Philadelphia is a cliquish town. I don't just hear this from Philadelphians. I hear this from people who visit Philadelphia, people who live temporarily in Philadelphia, people I talk to all the time who, when I tell them I'm from Philly, they say, oh yeah, you know what, you guys are really cliquish. That has to stop. It is infecting our politics and our ability to tackle these very destructive issues in any kind of unified and concerted way. It is infecting the very fabric of Philadelphia life like a virus. You hear me? Like a virus. This like Jack and Jill networking cliquish kind of Philly pot, like that has to stop, because we've got some serious issues here, especially after this pandemic. This illiteracy problem, that has to be tackled. The fact that there are not alarm bells ringing right now in City Hall about that. Nationwide, $2.2 trillion is lost in economic productivity as a result of adult illiteracy. So you can imagine how much money is being lost in Philly right now because of adult illiteracy. This has to stop, and it's because of the very narrow-minded way people conduct their politics, the very narrow-minded, nepotismical way that people conduct their politics in this city. That's what's holding us back. Full stop on that. Let me take a break, and we'll be right back. We have Dr. Michael Mandel, Chief Economic Strategist with the Progressive Policy Institute, is going to be calling us next. We're going to talk about jobs, the future of jobs, and excuse me, sorry about that, I had to catch my breath, the future of jobs and the future of work, particularly as we try to get through this pandemic. Coming up here next on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Heidi Seropoulos. If you're on Medicare, you should know that many Independence Blue Cross Medicare Advantage plans have a $0 copay for primary care physician visits and telemedicine medical doctor visits. All our plans have $0 in-network COVID-19 testing and treatment, and the largest network of doctors and hospitals in our area.
Call 833-848-0762 today. TTY-TDD 711. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or visit us online at ibxmedicare.com/doctors. Independence Blue Cross offers Medicare Advantage plans with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in Independence Medicare Advantage plans depends upon contract renewal. Independence Blue Cross offers products through its subsidiaries Independence Hospital Indemnity Plan, Keystone Health Plan East, and QCC Insurance Company, independent licensees of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association.
Did you get an eviction notice before the shutdown? Are you looking for a lawyer once the moratorium ends? There's so many questions with so little time. Let Equally Informed Philly find the answers for you. Just text the phrase Equal Info to the number 73224. Again, that's Equal Info, one word, to 73224. Their community information line will get the answers you need to survive in the time of COVID-19. Equally Informed Philly for all Philadelphians.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation
as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com.
Einstein Healthcare Network salutes all those on the front lines, keeping our communities healthy and safe. Thank you for all that you do. And to everyone doing your part by staying at home, we thank you. Working together, we will continue to slow the spread of coronavirus. Einstein is here for you, just like we've always been.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, but beyond the Delaware Valley, we are at WURDRadio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Go to @EllisReport, hashtag Reality Check for more insights into the world of politics and public policy. We give you your daily dose of that here on Reality Check, broadcasting from Philly and also from the nation's capital, from Washington, D.C. as well. We now have joining us Dr. Michael Mandel. He's Chief Economic Strategist for the Progressive Policy Institute. So for more there, go to progressivepolicy.org. Also check out a recent report, the 6 ideas they have for harnessing technology to create good work for Americans, using technology to fix this really severe jobs crisis that we're finding ourselves in as a result of pandemic. We were having something of a jobs crisis even before pandemic, and obviously coronavirus has exacerbated all that. But Dr. Michael Mandel joins us here on Reality Check to explore that issue. How are you doing, Dr. Mandel?
Thank you very much for having me here.
All right. Good afternoon. Thanks so much. So how badly has pandemic impacted the labor market from where you're standing, how you're viewing everything unfolding right now?
It's been a pretty terrible hit. I mean, it's been worse in many ways than the recession of 2007, 2008. If we just actually sort of look at Philadelphia, the private sector jobs are down 8 or 9% over the last year, which is far worse than it was in 2008, 2009. So this is really a pretty terrible labor market hit. If we look nationally, it's depending on which state and which part of the country, it's roughly the same size, and just not a good thing.
Yeah. I keep sort of reading or seeing conversations about the health of the overall economy. There's sort of a tendency from policymakers or influencers in the conversation, thought leaders who are in your space, who say, well, the macroeconomic fundamentals are still okay, surprisingly, during the pandemic, particularly when we compare ourselves to other countries or other developed countries, right? And so Are you seeing that conversation? Like I was reading something in the Atlantic where they were saying, the author was like, hey, you know what, the macroeconomic fundamentals are solid. Then you see the stock market that's like 30,000 plus points. That's where it is right now at record levels. So how do we navigate? How do we reconcile that conversation, right?
Well, this has been one of the oddest recessions ever, because some parts of the economy have been left virtually untouched, and other parts have been horribly hit. You know, we can see this. The restaurant industry, the tourism industry, similar ones that sort of depend on people gathering together, have been crushed. I mean, the airline industry and everything that goes along with the airline industry, whereas other parts, you know, you might be the white collar parts that people have been able to work at home, have been done much better. And then we've got, you know, food processing. Food processing is an industry which is still doing well if you look at the numbers, but what's been happening is that workers have been forced to keep working and sort of to get the coronavirus. And so the labor market numbers don't give us the full picture of the impact, but this has been extremely uneven in its impact on different occupations, different industries. And you know, you look out going forward, you say that the recovery is going to be very uneven as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I'm worried about, is that recovery. Real quick, you know, talking about the recovery, just want to get your thoughts before we get into that conversation about like the industries that are doing well, not doing so well, and getting a little bit more into detail about that job market, how to also get out of this pickle that we're in. Your thoughts about the potential for, first, we got this compromise pandemic relief bill that we keep hearing conversation about, you know, from a compromise, from a bipartisan panel of senators. And then we had the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, finally meet with the Treasury Secretary yesterday. They haven't done this for months. So some promising signs there. So we have that, and the potential for something that's more robust once we get into the new administration. Do you find that hopeful, or do you feel like that's too little, too late?
It's too little, too late. I think what happened is, a surprise to all of us, is that the Republicans were not interested in passing a big relief bill before the election. You would have thought that would have been obvious for them. So that didn't happen, and now we're looking at something that's much smaller, and the odds of anything larger really depends on what happens in the Georgia senatorial elections at this point, and that's anybody's guess. So, I mean, I'm not counting on it there, which is really unfortunate, because I think that we could have a fairly rapid recovery if we were willing to pour a lot of money into the economy at this point. Just pent-up demand. People want to eat out. They want to travel. I mean, they want to go to sports events. There's all sorts of things that they want to do, and if they've got money in their pocket, once the vaccine is out, they will do. But it'd be much harder if the federal government is forced to pull back rather than sort of drive forward.
What's the holdback here? I mean, is it like the government looking at its balance sheets and saying, oh, we don't have enough money to support that kind of like temporary shutdown of everything, and then just putting money directly into people's pockets? Is it that we don't have enough money in the Federal Reserve?
Well, what the surprise was how aggressive the actions were last spring. I mean, those were really exactly the right things to do. With the Atlantic article that you're talking about referred to those, that both Democrats and Republicans were willing to sign off very quickly on very large sums of money, pouring them into the economy. And right now we're almost back to politics as usual, where the Congress, especially on the Republican side, is much less willing to run bigger deficits in order to pump money into the economy, which is what they should be doing at this point. This is the right time. We're going to look back at this time and say there was a very large policy mistake made in not doing one more very large stimulus measure to get the pump running. Okay. Once the vaccine is out, we could end up getting stuck in a long, drawn-out recovery that is much worse than it could have been.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. We're talking with Dr. Michael Mandel. He's Chief Economic Strategist for the Progressive Policy Institute. Go to progressivepolicy.org for more information there. You talked about what's happening to those sectors. You have those white-collar sectors, they're doing fine. Blue-collar sectors not doing well at all. What are those 6 fixes or ideas that you're thinking about that you present in this brief, ways that you can fix that situation, fix that labor market?
Well, what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for ways of getting people back into the labor market, but not just at the low-wage jobs that they had before, but with something that with more oomph to it, something with more. What I talk about is, six ideas for harnessing technology to create good work for the future, good work for Americans, and this is future-looking. So, for example, one idea is to accelerate the rate of 5G jobs. Now, 5G is the new faster mobile devices, but it's not just mobile devices, it's for businesses too. And the 5G jobs are not just programming jobs, but they're things like telehealth installers. They're skilled blue-collar jobs that pay better and are tied to future work that are not going to be automated away. I talk about rebuilding the production economy, which is focusing on digital technologies for small and medium-sized manufacturing. And this is not about replacing workers, but about making U.S. manufacturers more productive and cheaper so they can compete. So they can compete against overseas producers and bring jobs back again. I talk about building e-commerce and manufacturing hubs. Now, if you know, one of the big bright spots for jobs has been e-commerce. E-commerce in the fulfillment centers and the delivery, and they've actually replaced most of the brick and mortar retail jobs that have disappeared. I mean, and in some ways they've actually done, replaced them with higher paying jobs. And what I'm talking about is not just having fulfillment centers, but sort of building small and medium-sized manufacturers around those fulfillment centers to speed up delivery and make the manufacturing more efficient. I'm talking about ways to improve conditions for improve benefits for independent workers, gig economy workers, to make sure they can get benefits like better retirement and better health care. Subsidizing work for the disadvantaged, which is giving employers tax breaks for hiring people that have been put out of work by the pandemic. And finally, and this is a little bit slightly futuristic, but not so much, we're sort of used to people who sort of go to college and go to community colleges getting sort of their credentials officially through the education system. And this is a way of providing, how you sort of give credentials to people who are working blue-collar jobs in terms of their skills, in terms of their soft skills and their ability to do their jobs, that they can carry these over to other places so they can get benefits of their experience.
Yeah, that skills enhancement as well. Let me let you get a sip of
tea.
Tea, right there you go. Yeah, that's important. Now, what's interesting about that, because you're talking about creating a much more sophisticated economy in a lot of ways, but making sure that it's more accessible for folks who don't have those levels of certification, don't have like those higher education or college credentials. And what's interesting, I wonder how like the higher education space feels about that, because now I suspect that, especially after this pandemic, because I was just talking with a college professor last night, professor at a major institution, elite institution in New York City, and she was like, yeah, like people are like, what am I getting for my $50,000 a year here? Because to meet you in an online remote setting, and some of the professors are not even showing up to these virtual classes. So I get a feeling that you're gonna see a lot of these colleges shut down or get fleshed out. They're gonna have to adapt to this new landscape, and perhaps even to this new sort of job market framework that you're setting up here, right?
Well, it's in some sense, the higher education system has been running on borrowed time for a while. They've been benefiting from a large influx of overseas students, which has been cut off by the inability to travel, and by people's desire to get an education. And now, as you say, they sort of see that the education that they're getting is perhaps, they're not quite sure what they're paying for.
Yeah.
And so we also have to sort of broaden and democratize the education system, and create a credential system that reaches down the job ladder, not just to people who have a higher education, but people who sort of graduated from high school.
Yeah.
Make sure they can get sort of noticed and recognized for their experience, their skills, in a way that is transportable from one employer to another, so that when they're knocked out of work like they are for the pandemic, they don't come back at the bottom of the career ladder again.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're spot on with that. So I am seeing, the developments of new streams of education, like micro degrees, micro bachelors, micro masters,
micro credentials, of all sorts. It's going to be a really interesting time in the education space. But we have to think about this as being broader than forcing everybody to go to college, which is just not the right thing. Okay?
Wow. Interesting. Some people might push back against that because they may say, well, that's like what my family wants for me. That's the legacy that I want to achieve, especially at a time, over the past like 40, 50 years, the higher education space has gotten more diverse, so it finally, after the civil rights movement, it opened up for example, the black middle class or the black working class to finally take their kids or send their kids to college. Now suddenly it opens up and it's too expensive, and now you're saying we don't need college. So some people may push back on that.
Well, but in some sense, what you want to do is you want to make college less expensive so that people who come out of it are not in so much debt. Okay, but you want to give also people a sort of a chance. So right now we've got about 1/3 of the population going to college. What happens to everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you sort of make sure that you're creating jobs that are high enough skills and high enough paid so there's a future for them?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point. My concern here on the use of technology, but I kind of, it was very interesting, fascinating the way you sort of laid it out. Like you were like, okay, not talking about technology in the sense that we automate things, but technology in the sense where it's like we're just expanding people's skill sets or allowing them to acquire skill sets that they can plug into this new economy. Still there's that issue, right, Professor, of like automation and AI and the growth of that. And I worry about, like, the more we talk about technology and innovation to restart or remake the job market, the more we're headed towards, displacing a lot of workers. So for example, like I'm worried about, like in the aftermath of the pandemic, restaurants and retailers are going to rely more on technology, on automation, to mitigate the spread of infectious diseases or bacteria. So they're like, you know what, I'm not going to use humans for this anymore to serve food, for example. I'm going to use a robot instead so I can mitigate the spread of bacteria. Well, that's going to displace a lot of people from doing certain kinds of work.
Well, what it's going to do, though, is create an enormous number of new jobs for people who repair robots. And I'm not being funny. I'm not being funny here, because what happens is these robots, these robots are out on the floor. They're not running themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay, they are finely tuned pieces of machinery, and if we look on the retail side, people sort of worried about this for e-commerce too, but it turned out that e-commerce creates a tremendous number of jobs for workers, mm-hmm. because what happens is, it's really interesting. What happened is that on the simple stuff, things that are easy size boxes, can be easily automated, but once you brought in e-commerce to sort of include all the things that are different shapes and to include the possibility for refunds and returns really easy, you discovered that you're generating hundreds of thousands of jobs that didn't exist before. And they are higher paid jobs because they work more with technology. This is very much like what happened in the Industrial Revolution, where people worried about the assembly lines taking away jobs. And what they really did is they created jobs for people that were comfortable working with machines. And so what's happening here is we're going to sort of create jobs for people that are comfortable working with robots, not designing them, not programming them, but working with them in a complementary capacity. And it's going to be a great period. I think this is going to be a great period of job creation here. That what's held us back at this point is that the inability to use technology in areas like manufacturing has allowed a lot of jobs to go overseas, because we've replaced jobs here in the U.S. with very low-paid jobs overseas. Mm-hmm. Now what happens is use technology, you reduce the cost, the jobs come back again.
Mm-hmm. Also, what's holding us back is a lack of imagination as well, too, right? And I mean, we got to be we have to be imaginary and creative on this. I mean,
absolutely.
That's what the innovation sector is all about. Hey, last question here, too, Professor. It's a fascinating conversation. I feel like I want to bring you back, to have more of it, because we do need to talk about, okay, what does the future hold? How do we align the education system? How do we repair? So we're going through this real struggle, totally dysfunctional K through 12 educational system, right? And we've got a big, massive, and costly national illiteracy problem, $2.2 trillion in lost economic productivity and growth because of functionally illiterate adults throughout the United States. So how do we fix that broken K through 12 education system that's become much more diverse? You know, it's majority non-white now, and then the adult illiteracy problem, so we can align with that vision that you just laid out.
Well, I should bring on some of the people from PPI who talk about charter schools at this point. Okay, and I don't want to sort of delve deeply into that nest of hornets, but I think that there's a lot of things going on in the education space that have a lot of potential. Yeah. The other thing is that as you see jobs, I mean, I consider these e-commerce jobs to be sort of the classic jobs of the future, where they're better paid, they work with technology, and now you sort of know what you're aiming your education system for. You didn't know what you couldn't people didn't want to produce students that were aimed for low-skill jobs, but not everybody was being, wanted to take the high-skill jobs. And so the question is, what does a middle-skill job look like in this economy? And I think we're sort of getting a sense now of what it is. And a lot of the jobs that I sort of talk about in this paper are middle-skill jobs that are better paid, have futures, and are accessible to a much wider range of people.
Middle skill. So that might end up being like the buzzword for today, middle skill. Michael Mandel, Chief Economic Strategist at the Progressive Policy Institute. We got to bring you back more often. So in fact, you gave me some food for thought on a lot of things here. So really appreciate your time this afternoon, Professor. Go to progressivepolicy.org and you can see his latest briefing, 6 ideas for harnessing technology to create good work for Americans. Dr. Michael Mandel is joining us by Skype from Washington, D.C., so I'm sure we'll talk to him at a later point. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check. I'm not sure if we do have Jenny. I don't know if we were scheduled to have Jenny Cohn back, so let's see if she joins us after this break, and we'll see what's happening after the break here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
In celebration of radio icon Cody Anderson.
Hey guys, this is Eric Nixon, production coordinator and producer of Evening Words and the Envy McKee Show here at WURD Radio. I have special memories of Cody Anderson while working here at WURD Radio. One was during the 990 movement launch, where Cody had instructed me as the producer to cut the microphone and have dead air during that time. To Cody's point, he wanted to help people realize what it would sound like without a voice in the community. Just proving the point that us being on air was pivotal to continuing our contribution to the Black voice of America.
Join us for the 5th Annual Empowerment Experience as we honor and celebrate radio icon Cody Anderson and his contributions to independent Black media. RSVP now at WURDradio.com and join us live on air Friday, December 4th from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com, the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. Sponsored by Pico, Keystone Plus, Pennsylvania Lottery, Einstein, Dedicated Senior Medical Centers, and TML Communication. Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Say save space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison
right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, we're able to get in touch with Jennifer Cohn, so we'll try to get her next week because I do want to get an update on. I know she's following. Still, she's been watching closely, like what the aftermath of these elections are, particularly as it relates to election security. Still a lot of election security conversation going on, and I know that there is a conventional wisdom out there that wants to push the idea or the notion that everything went smoothly with the election. It did not. It did not. And so we still have problems, and so some of those problems still have to be addressed. So hopefully we'll get Jenny Cohn next week, or we'll still try her while we're talking right now. She is coming on. Okay, we're going to give her about a minute. She may join us by Skype. I hope she joins us by Skype, but it'll be good to talk with her. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, speaking of Georgia, there was a there was a special election going on for the it was a House runoff special election in Georgia last night that happened, and so the remainder of the late great Congressman John Lewis's term will be served by a brother by the name of Kwanzaa Hall. So he'll just be in that seat. He'll be keeping it warm for a month. So Hall's going to be sworn in after the election results are certified. He's going to serve for about a month. He's going to represent Georgia's 5th Congressional District until early January. And then Representative-elect Nakima Williams, a Democrat, a sister, will take control of that seat. She won that in the November general election, but they have to fill the seat technically, officially, for about a month. And so Kwanzaa Hall will serve that last month of John Lewis's term. So Kwanzaa Hall, congratulations to him, and congratulations to the resume booster, because that's all he's going to end up being for the most part, unless he runs again at some other point. But definitely he's get to be a congressperson for a month. So I mean, not many people can say that, but anyway, Kwanzaa Hall going to be serving that remaining month. 215-634 as we wait on Jenny Hall. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Also in other national news, Attorney General William Barr telling the Associated Press that the Justice Department has not uncovered widespread voting fraud that could have changed the results of the outcome of the 2020 election. So that's from the Attorney General, who's been acting like somewhat of a personal attorney for the president, and who will be who is now the outgoing Attorney General at this stage. Quoting Attorney General William Barr, it's a direct, no, I'm sorry, but I thought I had that quote in front of me, but I don't. But that's basically what Attorney General William Barr, his own AG, is saying. So even his own AG is saying that, hey, now no voter fraud here. There are some reports of the Justice Department, however, investigating a potential pay-to-play scenario or a corruption scandal among many within the White House. But apparently, some interest, some corporate interest, or some individuals representing or particular corporate interests were attempting to pay the White House for a pardon of someone in federal custody. So there are reports of that. They had apparently had a conversation with senior White House officials about getting President Trump to pardon someone. We don't have too many details yet, but pardoning, but the Justice Department is looking into it. But they were going to, it was a bribery scheme. They were going to pay for these White House officials to, I guess, and don't know how high level the conversation got, but they were going to pay these White House officials to persuade the president to issue a pardon for someone who's currently in federal custody, who is inside a federal prison right now as we speak. So don't have too many details beyond that, but that's something else that's lurking on Capitol Hill, among many other things we're going to find out about, especially when Joe Biden heads into the White House and starts to look at all the skeletons in the closet, because there are many of them that are there, and we probably not going to get a full kind of picture or glimpse of exactly how bad it's been in the Trump White House until we have the new president to kind of see, when he's going to have to take some time to assess that. So that's the latest off Capitol Hill. I also told you about, this was fairly significant, Cecilia Rouse, who was selected as or who has been announced as the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors in the White House, will be elevated to a cabinet seat position. That will be a cabinet position and not just an advisory role to the president. So Cecilia Rice is a Black woman. She teaches economics at Princeton. She is known as a reputable figure in the field of economics, and Ivy League educated, of course. And so she's a Black woman, and she will be elevated to a cabinet position. So I suspect that comes from some of the pressure that the president-elect is getting from the likes of folks like Congressman Jim Clyburn and others in the civil rights community about the presence of Black persons or African Americans on his cabinet, his incoming cabinet. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Of course, they have not met with him yet. I know that there have been demands from folks like Mark Morial at the Urban League, Derek Johnson at the NAACP, and others do want to have a sit down. Reverend Al Sharpton at the National Action Network, they do want to have a sit down with the president-elect soon so they can discuss those concerns. That has not been scheduled yet, but we're keeping an eye on that as well. I'm sure I'm going to be hearing about it when I'm on Reverend Sharpton later today, which you'll hear later on here on WURD. I think we have Jennifer Jenny Cohn back with us. So it's been a couple weeks since we last spoke with her, a few weeks, I think. So it's good to have her back on. Jenny, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Join us by Skype. It's good to have you. So we got you still good for more than several minutes. So this is good. Get an update from you. It's good. I know that, election 2020 happened. We got the outcome pretty much, at least on the presidential level, that we wanted, but you still have concerns, right? I mean, you're still seeing things that still bother you about the administration of this election and the secureness of those election systems, those election machines. Kind of give us an overview of some of those concerns you still have with respect to election security.
Sure. So the number one recommendation of election security experts before the 2020 election was to conduct robust manual election audits for every race using a reliable paper trail. And even putting aside the issue of what it means to have a reliable paper trail, we don't have jurisdiction. Most jurisdictions do not conduct robust manual election audits. They just don't. And there was a bill that the Democrats passed through the House and tried to get passed in the Senate, but it was killed by Republicans, and it was called the SAFE Act, that would have required a robust manual election audits, at least for federal races, because Congress has jurisdiction over federal elections. The GOP killed it, and as a result, just 2 states actually conduct audits that experts say are reliable in terms of detecting hacking. And those 2 states are Colorado and I believe Rhode Island is the other. So they're not swing states, and even those 2 states only do a few races on the ballot, which means we have completely unverified electronic elections. And I'm particularly concerned down ballot that nobody really scrutinizes those at all. And so, yeah, I'm very upset that we, so far anyway, haven't won the Senate, but that we have unverified losses in the Senate. That, you know, that polls are not proof of anything, but they are sort of, it is disconcerting when you consistently do more poorly as a party than the polls predict, and then everyone assumes that the polls must have been wrong when no one is verifying the outcomes. And that is my overall concern.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jenny. Once again, we're talking with Jennifer Cohn, election and security advocate here on Reality Check. She joins us regularly to talk about that. I think it's a very good point that you make, Jenny, because in some cases, even when we talk about the presidential race and we look at like how tight the margins were, well, maybe the margins really weren't that tight. Maybe in reality, you know what I mean? Maybe the margins were much wider, but we have some discrepancies there as far as like the non-auditing of these electronic elections. No paper trail to speak of. Maybe in some of these Senate races, it actually could have gone well. In a few Senate races for Democrats. I mean, we think.
In many, yes, I think it's possible, but in many cases we do have a paper trail. It's just that nobody looks at it. So in many ways, it might as well be paperless if no one's going to look at it. There is some deterrent aspect, I suppose. But if you have, you know, if you're talking again especially about down ballot races, state legislatures, apparently we got pummeled, which is going to be a disaster for the redistricting, the new maps, and nobody looks at those races. And, you know, those, especially for a state legislature, if somebody loses, they can't afford to do a recount. It's you know, really cost prohibitive, and they'll be called a sore loser. And you probably, unless it's within a certain margin, usually less than 1%, or if you think it's even usually less than 0.5%, you don't usually qualify for an automatic recount. So you have to go to court, and then you have to be able to prove fraud, which you can't prove because you need access to the evidence, which is the paper and the machines, in order to do that. So it's this big circular catch-22 nightmare.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I don't think people understand it. Like the paper trail is there. The paper trail is there. In most places, there is a paper trail. Got it. It's just the paper trail has to get activated, but then, you know, it's like it's costly. It involves in a lot of respects litigation. It's optically, you know, public relations wise, it becomes there's a stigmatization that's attached to it. You know, because people are like, oh, you're just being a sore loser. I mean, we kind of saw elements of like how that could unfold or be activated, but in the wrong way, with President Trump going to all these different states and demanding recounts and saying that fraud took place. But I mean, maybe, I don't know, in an ideal world, maybe it's like, okay, hey, the election is taking place. Now we're going to take our time and conduct a counting of the paper ballots. I mean, maybe that's what this also has to do with, Jenny, to some extent, is the impatience of the American electorate. We want our results on the same day, at that time, before midnight. That's another thing driving this too.
You know, I'm not sure that it really is. I think it's election administrators and lawmakers that are driving it. And unfortunately, primarily the Republican Party obstructing laws that would require us to conduct the audits. I mean, the American public could get their results on election day or a few days or whenever they get them, and then they don't have to tune in that much to the audits. But I don't think that is necessarily stopping it. I want to say about Trump, so there are some in the election integrity movement who I think they're wrong, but they see that Trump's screaming of a rigged election could help the election integrity movement. And I mean, I understand what they're saying in the sense that it's waking people up to the possibility of election fraud, but they're a party that, you know, their MO is lying, and Trump lies about the weather. He lies about everything. And what they're doing, we have an opaque election system that doesn't let us know typically whether outcomes are legitimate or not, but that is not free reign to scream rigged election when you don't have the evidence. And I'm sympathetic to the fact that none of us have access to that evidence, but that doesn't mean you get to lie and go out and scream rigged election. And in particular, when they are the ones, they wanted this election to be unverifiable. They wanted that. They knew that Russia was attacking our election infrastructure. They knew that Putin was allies with Trump. They probably thought it would be to their benefit. The SAFE Act would have also banned internet connectivity of voting systems. And these Republican operatives have the gall to are screaming now to have discovered that some of the voting systems connect to the internet. Well, no freaking shit, Sherlock. That's what we were trying to block. And they purposely left them that way. They obviously thought it would help them. And because, unfortunately, the Democrats are not very good at messaging and didn't want to undermine trust in an untrustworthy process, they did not make that point publicly clear, and they didn't make it clear that that was included even in the legislation that they had drafted, not to the public. I think they tried to handle this behind closed doors. But the problem with that is you have an information vacuum and a messaging vacuum, and you have the QAnon crazies who are happy to fill it with 1/10 truth and 9/10 lies. And that's what they're doing. And they're targeting one vendor, which is very suspicious. Everything that they're targeting, only Dominion Voting. And ES&S is America's largest vendor. It has ties to the GOP. It has had many more glaringly obvious concerns with it over the past several years and over the past decade than Dominion, and yet they won't touch it. And that is quite frankly suspicious.
We're talking with Jennifer Cohn, election security advocate, joins us here regularly on Reality Check. We're talking about election security. We're going to continue to talk about it and go over some of those issues and those challenges and try to see, ways in which we can fix it as well. Go to @JennyCohn, COHN1, @JennyCohn1 on social media, where you can find more insights and more information and intelligence like this right here on Reality Check and beyond on social media, on Twitter. Jenny, thanks for your time. Always good talking with you.
Thank you. It's great talking to you too.
All right. Take care. Be safe.
You too.
Okay. Let's take a break. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Dietz & Watson has been making premium meats and artisan cheeses for over 80 years. And when it comes to stacking sandwiches and party platters, they've got something for everyone in the family, like maple honey turkey breast, American cheese, buffalo chicken, and more. So get to your local deli and taste 4 generations of family recipes. With Dietz & Watson on the table, you'll have everyone coming back for seconds and thirds. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
Now, a WURD Radio election update. Here's WURD's election coverage reporter in partnership with VoteBeat, Sojourner Ahebe.
I'm Sojourner Ahebe with today's election coverage report. During the 2020 general election, over 2/3 of Philadelphia voters said yes to replacing the chronically underfunded Police Advisory Commission with the Citizen Police Oversight Commission. Critics have said that the current watchdog group has lacked substantial investigative powers, like compelling police records and independently investigating officer misconduct. Council member at large Kendra Brooks says City Council, which will determine the powers of the new civilian watchdog group, recognized that oversight needed a permanent place in the city's infrastructure.
For quite some time, civilians have made complaints to the police department that have not been met with any action or kind of have been just dismissed. So I'm hoping that with the new Police Oversight Commission, that given new powers, that we will be able to hold police accountable for violating, their roles and their duties. Their job is to serve and protect. However, we have a large number of Philadelphians that don't necessarily feel that way.
According to Police Advisory Commission Executive Director Anthony Arachi, the current oversight group exists under the mayor's office executive order, but that's going to change.
This will be a standalone independent agency and department. We would permanently exist, and that there comes with that sort of freedom and expansion comes a greater ability to impact policing for the public good and for policing's good.
The passage of the ballot measure also comes with expanded oversight powers.
Individual investigations and expanding policy and practice research and oversight auditing and monitoring and sort of discipline reform.
Currently, the Police Advisory Commission is staffed by 7 people in a city with 6,500 police officers, and they run on an annual budget of $668,000. That's compared to oversight agencies like New York City's Civilian Complaint Review Board, which is allotted $19 million annually and covers 251 full-time positions, according to city budget records. And Arachi says it's imperative for the new Oversight Commission's budget to be directly tied to the city's police department. This ensures longevity and prevents influence from changing city government administrations. For Councilmember Brooks, the new commission is an opportunity to move the needle on much-needed police reform in the city.
Because we realize that a lot of this stuff is systemic, and it has been happening for generations. And the long-term goal is just to break down, systemic racism, but we see that everywhere.
In Philadelphia, Sojourner Ahebe, WURD Radio.
This was a WURD Radio election update, presented in partnership with VoteBeat. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent, black media.
COVID-19 impacted a lot of things this year, including regular vaccination appointments. Vaccines help protect you and everyone around you, especially during flu season. Schedule an appointment with your healthcare provider today to make sure you and your children are vaccinated. Vaccines keep us safe, and they work. Skip the flu this year. Get your vaccination today. Let's stay protected together. For more information, visit health.pa.gov, paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Yeah, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. Also, don't forget about the WURD Empowerment Experience. That is coming up on Friday, December 4th. That's at 1 p.m. We will be celebrating the history and impact of black radio in Philadelphia, but also celebrating, honoring Cody Anderson, radio icon. And so Cody Anderson also going to be joined by his son, Bill Anderson, Kenny Gamble, Iyanla Benzant, and others, as everyone will be giving some presentations, offering some reflections on Cody Anderson. We're also going to have a WURD host roundtable at 1 p.m. Or a little bit after 1 p.m. Where we'll be, the WURD hosts will be talking with Cody Anderson about black radio impact. We have some musical and poetry presentations that are in store for you. So this is all across WURD channels, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. It's a virtual affair, of course, and but you can register. You have to register. It's free, but you have to register at WURD Radio. Get more information and register at WURD Radio, WURDradio.com. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. Here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. Here on Reality Check. Just folks saying some things, people reacting to my conversation earlier about Philly politics. And a previous caller we had, Raphael Suleiman, saying, yes, Philly is very cliquish because most of the residents are from the Carolinas. They know all about the plantation mentality. Most of the Jack and Jill black folks live in the suburbs now. Montgomery County, they are not involved in the local police circles for the most parts. Black residents, for the most part, are transplanted Southerners from Virginia. I can attest to that. Still got families coming from Virginia, Maryland, and the Carolinas. It's an interesting point. Hallie Stephen Alston saying, spot on, Charles. I say it all the time. My city, Philly, is very clique-oriented now to the T. It extends in the political, economic, educational, religion fields. Even our neighborhoods are like that. Let me see here. Oh, Raphael Suleiman also making a comment on, our academic institutions in the city. The international students dominate in numbers at Penn, especially kids from China, India, and the Middle East. I heard that Drexel has a large number of foreign students, too. Raphael saying, Andrew Yang was former presidential candidate, warned us already, we will need a universal basic income because automation will displace a lot of workers. I think that we need a tuition-free community college of Philadelphia now based upon the literacy rates here. I know Mayor Kenny's working on that. He's has put Community College Philadelphia on that direction. Once AI is perfected, a human being, well, I don't know what's going to be happening with that kind of funding stream during the pandemic and after, but we'll see. Once AI is perfected, a human being will not be needed at all unless they are working as a repair person or an engineer. Some interesting thoughts from Raphael Suleiman. So, yeah, I do worry about that. Because that's still kind of on the horizon there. Let me go to Lola out of Jenkintown, who's calling in for a reality check. Lola?
Yes, hi, Charles.
Hey, what's happening? All right.
Hey, how are you? Yes, thanks. I didn't know if you could hear me.
Right.
Thanks. I wanted to also, you always say shout out Troy, so I want to shout out Troy on the boards or whatever.
Yeah,
I have two issues. Like I'm really appalled at I don't know if I want to use the word appalled. That might be a little harsh. But black people pushed Joe Biden in, and he wouldn't even be here if Clyburn from South Carolina didn't endorse him because he was way behind Bernie Sanders at that time. Once Clyburn endorsed him, he pushed him way over. Then black people showed up and showed out in COVID, no jobs, being forced out of their homes, apartments, whatever, on and on and on. And now we have to remind him that we need black people in the top cabinet positions. I'm just so sick and tired of this. And this is where some of the apathy comes from when I remember when you would be protesting throughout the whole election about we shouldn't be saying people. Now, I never said it, but people shouldn't be saying it's between good and evil or something like that. People were saying a lot of things, and you were saying, no, you just need to pick Joe Biden. But this is where the apathy comes from, Charles. That no matter what we do, no matter how hard we push people over, now we have to remind you, we should. He should already be having his top cabinet black picks when he was.
And to that point,
go ahead.
But I was going to say, Lola, to that point about Clyburn, I think it was a tactical mistake on Clyburn's part because he did an interview. Where was this? I forget where the interview was, but anyway, he did a recent television interview where they had asked him directly, "Hey, do you feel like Joe Biden owes you because he's you're the reason that he was able to win. He got through the primary and won, and now this is where he is." And Clyburn was like, "No, he doesn't owe me anything." He just got kind of like indignant, like in his classical Clyburn way, like he doesn't owe me anything. Like that's not how it works. It's like, no, yeah, he does. Let me just say it.
Exactly.
This is how this works. And I think
CNN.
I think it was CNN, and it's like, no, Congressman, with all due respect, no, this is how it works. Like, this is, you should make that demand right then and there in that moment.
Exactly.
And I think it sends the wrong telegram
It does.
to the president-elect, because the president-elect is like, okay, well, I guess he doesn't seem to be all that
exactly,
hot
Charles,
about it.
This goes back to how slavery it was, where they would use and use, right, and then we would say, no, we're doing this out of the goodness of our heart because God. No, this is how the other side, Republicans and white people, get over. Once they get in, they help their families. They get their families in. They get their relatives in. They get the next door neighbor in before they would get a black person in. And when we get in, like you said, Clyburn says, no, you don't owe us. No, well, speak for yourself because he owes the country. He owes black people who got him in where he is. Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's like going back to that conversation about like the black political establishment, the black leadership class. We need one, and it's there, but they're gonna have to be a lot more aggressive. Lola, I gotta let you go. Let me just take because I got to get ready to wrap here. But I appreciate what you're saying there. I totally agree with you. But it's just something we're gonna kind of keep a watchful eye on. We need that leadership class. Obviously, or that leadership element, let's say leadership element, I don't want to use the word class, but that leadership element to help navigate us through the corridors of places like Capitol Hill, Harrisburg, City Hall, but do it right and be aggressive in that representation. Like, make those demands. Sometimes, they do get very, suddenly, scared and, that no one's going to know, Biden's not going to know exactly, you can only expect so much out of, at the end of the day, this old white male president. And so, because he's got his own set of concerns. So he's not going to know unless you put those demands on him constantly, especially if you're in those positions of influence and power. And that's got to happen. I've got to wrap this Wednesday edition of Reality Check. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, 10 a.m. sharp. We have City Council Live tomorrow, I'm told. We have The Source with the Black Women's Leadership Council that is coming up next. Maybe they'll talk a little bit more about some of those concerns that Lola just talked about or just addressed. So I'm sure they will. So looking forward to the Black Women's Leadership Council coming up next. Keep your radio dial locked in. We are headed off. Thank Troy Wilmore. Thank you, Troy, at the Board of Steel. And everyone, please stay smart, stay sharp, but more importantly, stay safe out there. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.